2019. We are going to begin with interviews. We have 2 candidates today for the vacancy of the term for the second alternate of the zoning hearing board. Our first candidate is Michael Lamb. You come up here. Hi. Hi. Here. Out of there. Okay. All right, Michael, thank you for applying. We have your information that you sent in, your syllabus here. So the way we do this is if you need to add anything to what is already here, you can do that. If you need to want to add something short, otherwise we kind of go around and council member that has a question, they ask you.
Yeah,
Okay?
I don't believe I have anything to add, so please.
Okay, okay.
You have a lot of experience in real estate and corporate and business representation of people. Have you ever been before a zoning board?
Yes.
Oh, you have been?
Been
McCandless?
representing, no, never before McCandless.
Okay, have you ever sat, they meet every fourth Wednesday, practically speaking, sometimes the calendar changes. Every fourth Wednesday at 7:30, and it's right next door. And you know that the rules, it's like a quasi-judicial board, but the rules of evidence aren't really followed that strictly, you know, and so they're not really. And if there's a court reporter, if you're thinking of appealing a case, you'd have a court reporter there. And therefore, are you familiar with the zoning ordinances of McCandless?
I have reviewed them primarily in preparation for this meeting. To
Right.
be honest, I haven't had the need to look at them for a client matter or a personal matter, but I have familiarity enough with the MPC and other municipalities' codes.
So you looked online?
Yes.
Okay. So, let's see. There's a three-member board, and there's 2 alternates, and you would be one of the alternates. So that would be.
Yeah, my understanding is unless someone recuses themselves, I'm
Yeah.
primarily just sitting in to advise and not vote.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So,
Yeah. No, this is just for me to take the floor for a minute. I've been a town resident for about 5 years. My family just moved into a new house. We will not be leaving the town anytime soon.
mhm.
I just dropped out of my last volunteer commitment, and I am interested in giving back any way I can. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
But I'm familiar enough.
Okay. Good. I don't have further questions.
Okay. What would be your greatest strength that you'd bring to this?
Oh, I just greatest strength, pragmatism, and an ability to, I think, walk a line that balances the interests of all parties. I understand that I have an interest in land use primarily because it's providing for the property owner to utilize their property in any way that they deem necessary within the boundaries of what McCandless Town's kind of overall plan is. And I just think that I have the ability to understand both sides well.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mr. Lamb, do you anticipate any potential or perceived conflicts of interest with your business dealings now and serving on the board?
I do not, and to the extent that one would arise, I would recuse myself, but I don't envision needing to come before the committee for any existing clients. And obviously I can't predict the future, and I hope I'm wrong, but to the extent that would arise, I would obviously have to recuse myself.
Does your work primarily keep you local here in the area?
Western Pennsylvania, yes.
Okay.
Now, we have a relatively sophisticated practice for being suburban, but yeah, our work is largely tri-state, primarily Western. Yeah.
I asked the question as an alternate. like to be, make sure that you're land-based here so that you're available when
I'm
needed.
lucky that I work 7 minutes from home, and that's on the Ross McCandless line, and I will be able to honor my commitments.
And have you ever, in your past work or volunteer service, served in any type of judiciary or decision-making board?
No,
Okay, so first chance.
this will be the first, yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
Since you've lived here for 5 years, are there any things in McCandless that you would like to see changed or done differently?
No, truly. I probably need a larger body of evidence to really give you a better answer, but at the moment, no. I'm very pleased with all that the municipality can do for its residents. I'm happy to have stayed.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that you're so happy in
Yeah.
McCandless. Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good, good.
Yeah, Mr. Lamb, none of us can see the future, but I did notice in here your extensive activities in a number of acquisitions or providing, I guess, legal advice for various businesses, including acquisition of an in-home senior care business, recycling plant, and other items in there. I would think it is possible that such activities could give rise to a conflict. I mean, we can't know what's going to occur, but because those are areas that we have touched upon in zoning. I just mentioned that as an aside. What is the? Can you identify precisely what it is that motivated you to apply for this? If you haven't said so, just the service aspect of it.
So I've always had an interest in land use, and like I said, I'm a town resident. I'm interested in giving back when I can. I just rolled off of a prior board commitment. It was the right timing for me personally. And I actually wasn't going to look for anything for about a year, but I happened to see that this was an opening, and I thought, this made a lot of sense and it fit within my skill set.
So,
So
just one final question. The New England School of Law, where is that located? I'm guessing, that would be my guess, yeah.
I got out of Pittsburgh for 3 years for law school,
Yeah,
but
sure.
came right back.
Thank you very much, sir.
I don't have any questions.
Oh, okay.
Have you attended any of the zoning hearing board meetings?
For McCandless, no.
Oh, okay. If you're not chosen as an alternate, there should be 2 more positions that are coming up on that board this year. Would you be interested in being thrown into that mix?
Sure.
Too? Okay, all right, we'll keep his file then, if possible there. Those were my 2 questions. Thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
in.
thank you.
Pleasure meeting
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Art, Newsbomb? Hi. All right, I'll just repeat the directions for you just because I do the same for everybody. And that is that we have your information here. And if you want to add anything to that, please feel free to do that. So we'll go around the table just like that and ask you any questions, okay? All right, sounds good.
Just some personal information about me. I'm a retired physician. I started working at Passivant in the Department of Radiology when we first moved here in 1982. And I guess towards the end of my career, I became chief of the department, but I had to retire in 2007 because I developed macular degeneration. So that was going to be a problem in my practice of radiology. So after that, I went to Duquesne Law School as a part-time student. I got my law degree in 2013. And I had.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I have some interest in municipal law because I live here, and I had a course from Judge James. I think he's the lawyer. He's the judge that's ruled on a lot of controversies here. And in preparation for this, I didn't read the McCandless ordinances, but I reviewed my law book, Mandeliger's municipal law. So I brushed up a little bit on variances and special exemptions and zoning amendments and things like that. So, and you know, I'm a retiree, I don't play golf, I don't play cards, so I need some, you know, I want to do something, and I would like to serve my community in some way. And I thought with the law degree, I was interested in the zoning hearing board simply because it's a quasi-judicial body, and I guess it's a little removed from politics, because basically what we have to do is apply the law to the set of facts before us, and if the applicant meets the requirements of the law, then, you know, we have to accept whatever he's applying for. And sometimes, I guess, in law, you know, you can't, in other words, you know, if you apply the law, you might not like the outcome in a certain case. And again, I just try to be totally, you know, totally neutral on these things. I don't have any conflicts of interest. I don't know a lot of people here. I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody any favorites. And I guess I really, you know, whether people like me or not has nothing to do with what I, you know, you know, what I would do where I, you know, if I were to be accepted on the committee. I guess I tend to be an academic and look at things that way. And again, I look forward to a chance to serve, and I realize that this is just the second alternate, so I would not be a normal voting member. I'd be able to attend all the meetings of the zoning hearing board and give my input. I realize I wouldn't be able to vote unless I've been asked to participate because somebody, you know, one of the regular members was absent or had to recuse themselves. So.
Thank you.
So they meet at the fourth Wednesday of every night. Of every month. That's the normal schedule. Any time there's anything on the agenda. Is that a problem with you? Fourth Wednesday at 7:30.
Leave for Florida for a month in March.
Yeah.
That's otherwise I'm completely available.
And so, have you ever attended McCandless Zoning Hearing Board?
No, I really haven't.
Okay, so there again, this Wednesday. I mean, not this Wednesday, but Wednesday, the fourth month is when they're going to be meeting. And you're right. There's 3 members, and then there's the 2 that form the board, and then there's two alternates that are sort of in learning the system and process. And I think Bruce Betty, our zoning land administrator, has a booklet that outlines a lot of the stuff. So you said you were not familiar with the McCandless zoning ordinance at this stage, but
Well, I haven't read the book, as I say. I imagine it's very similar to the case law that you know, the general rules for the. You know, I know there's a Pennsylvania statute for zoning variances and there's guidelines for special exemptions and things like that.
Yeah, the municipal planning code. Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thanks.
I don't have any questions either.
Mr. Nussbaum, have you ever sat on a board, a decision-making board before?
Not a municipal. I mean, not the executive committee at Bassett Hospital,
Oh,
things
okay.
like that. But and I was chair of our own group, you know, before I had to retire. But in terms of anything political or you know, municipal, no.
I see Mr. Garber listed here under academics as a legal reference.
I'm sorry.
Kevin Garber's listed as a.
Yeah, he was the dean of the law school.
Dean of the law.
He's now the president of the university. Very, very good guy. I enjoyed his class.
Even Gormley.
It was interesting being somebody my age.
No, he's speaking of Gormley. I'm sorry, I was speaking of Kevin Garber.
Kevin Garber, yeah, he was he taught us environment law. Yeah,
Environmental, right, okay. Very
Yeah,
good.
yeah, but I think in real life, he advocates for the drillers.
Yeah.
I don't think, you know, he taught us about the Environmental Protection Act and things like that, but I think in real life.
I think, yeah, I always find Kevin to be a balance, but brilliant. You've already indicated you don't anticipate any conflicts of interest,
No,
and
no.
you're available on call whenever we need.
Sure, I mean, most of my life I've been on call, so.
You've answered all my questions, thank
Yeah,
you.
no.
How long have you lived in McCandless?
We moved here in 1982.
No, good long
We
time.
lived on Hedwig Drive. That was the first place that we lived on. And we moved to Brittany Place. That's in Briarwood, and now we live in the Manor right down the road from here. You know, you would ask the other candidate about.
I was just gonna ask you the same question.
Well, when we first moved here, I mean, you know, when you drove up McKnight Road, it was all treed and it was beautiful. And we lived on Headway, Montgomery Drive. I mean, the intersection of Montgomery and Babcock, it was all treed. I mean, I would just like, you know, I don't want to inhibit business but I mean, I would like to see developers make some effort to preserve, you know, to save
Right,
some of
right.
the landscape. And, you know, I know it can be done. My son lives in Sterling, Virginia, Northern Virginia suburbs, and they build huge shopping malls, but they still manage to, and large residential developments, but they manage to save the old, you know, the hardwood trees around the. And I would like to see more of that done in
Okay,
McCandless.
that's good.
I mean, that's I mean, we love living here. It's a great place to live.
Well, that's a good thought to bring to
You
the
know, as long as the
committee.
taxes, I'm a retiree on a fixed income right now, so, you know, my only, you know, I've been discussed, you know, we just would like to see our taxes stay
Oh,
predictable.
yes, wouldn't we all?
Yeah.
Thank you.
One way to do that may be downsize.
Yeah, that's true too. Well, we bought the house, but the bedrooms were for the grandkids that never come.
Yeah.
Maybe you're all, you know,
Yeah.
you know, for those in my generation, you had the same
All of your
experience.
thoughts.
Great grandkids in our case.
What's that?
Great grandkids in our case.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, great grand, that's true.
Dr. Nussbaum, if I
Yes.
may call you that.
Sure,
Doctor.
thank you.
I just wanted 2 comments and then a general question. I noticed that you were quite a student, with graduating with honors from Tulane's Medical School and magna cum laude from Duquesne's Law School. Congratulations on both of those.
Yeah, thank you.
That's quite an accomplishment. After your graduation from law school, I may just have not carefully read this enough. How are you occupying your time after that?
I've done some freelance work for people like reviewing case for malpractice attorneys, but I've never been able to shut this off. You know, I've never been able to get a full-time job or even a part-time job at a law firm. And what I learned, are you a lawyer, sir?
Yes, sir.
Well, as you know, I guess when somebody gets out of medical school, and perhaps you know this too, you know, when you get your MD degree, on day one of your internship, the first job out of medical school, you have some skills that somebody's willing to pay for. You have a lot of training ahead of you, but you still can take on some major responsibility and do some major stuff. And again, you earn your salary, whereas in law school, when you get out of law school, you know absolutely nothing. I mean, in medical school, we take our board exams, you know, half the questions you can answer because I saw it and I did it. Law school is all memorization, theoretical classroom. And I mean, torts class, I asked the torts professor, we were talking about wild animals, the law of wild animals and strict liability. If you have a tiger in your backyard, or if you have a wild boar and somebody sticks their hand in the cage. But I asked him what happens if I'm walking my dog, someone pets him and the dog bites his hand because the guy, you know, oh, very interesting, we'll have to look. You know, I mean, some of these people, you know nothing beyond the walls of the law school. We had a few good courses from adjunct professors, but it turned out no one is going to hire you at age, I guess I was about age 65, 67 when I graduated. And I'm sure in your law firm, I should have known no one's going to take somebody.
I can't say that for sure, but you may be too smart to work in my law.
Right, well, I mean, I am an academic, but as an example, I went to work for legal aid.
Turn off the recording.
I looked at your CV, and I'm not sure you're a good fit for it.
He's now an independent attorney. He's no longer employed with Tucker.
Oh, you're with Tucker Arensberg.
Don't say anything else.
No, but what I was going to say is I did try to do some volunteer work for neighborhood legal services. Well, first of all, I mean volunteer, but I have to pay $20 a day to park in the park. Plus, they gave me some cases to review for people who were denied Social Security benefits. And I looked at the medical record and looked at the Social Security law. And there's nothing in the record that says that this guy can't work. Unfortunately, this person is a malingerer, and I can't make a legal case. And I asked her, the director, do you have any doctor that you have a special relationship with who's more likely to give you favorable decisions than unfavorable? And no, I mean, they certainly didn't have that. So, you know, I was supposed to make a case for why this guy deserved benefits, and, you know, I couldn't do it. And you know, it just, also, I guess at the age I was, people were pretty hesitant, you know, to try to mentor me, someone who's 30 years younger than me. I guess that was sociologically, that was an awkward situation. I mean, I enjoyed law school. I mean, as a 65-year-old in a class of 20-year-olds, I was a part-time day student. They gave me an accommodation because of my eyesight, so I had extra time on the bar exam. I did pass the bar exam. But if I had a question, I would ask it, and I wasn't worried about looking silly. Whereas when you were in law school, you know, everybody was afraid to ask the question. So, hey, I'm paying $3,000 a credit hour. If I have a question, you know, I will ask it. And you know, I would speak up and say things. This is a preposterous decision. I mean, how did the judge even dignify this fact pattern with a decision? You don't think so? I mean, I would think that way. So it was, you know, it was a nice. You know, I had a good time, but I just wish the admission officer would have told me, look, you know. And I've talked to lawyers, and they said, look, you know, I don't care about your academic credentials. You know, at best you're going to work for me for 5 years and then retire. Or, you know, I mean, that's the attitude. And how much money are you going to bring into the law firm? Because I'm not a salesman, unfortunately. I have some talents, but you know, drumming up business is not one of them.
It's a rough business for sure.
Yeah, and it is. It's all about business. You know, the law is sort of secondary.
Well, you don't have to bring business to the zoning hearing board, so that's not a consideration.
Just
for us.
apply the law to the facts.
That's right.
Of course, we have a lot of decision as what's going to be a threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the community and things like that. You know, so, I mean, the zoning board has some discretion, but still, it's, you know, I guess the issue was, have they met the requirements, and you know, they had, you know, if somebody asked for a variance, does his justification, you know, does it match the requirements of the zoning ordinance or the variance? You know, I forget what it is, Pennsylvania municipal code, whatever. But there's a definite menu of stuff that, you know, to qualify for a variance at A, B, C, D. Even, you know, if you can have A, B, C, D, but not E, it doesn't. So I'm sorry. I mean, you're supposed to be asking me questions.
Anything else, Pat?
No.
Well, I did. I guess I just quickly scanned the resume. In response to all my questions, I'm not sure you really answered it, but maybe answer it myself. Your current experience in law is with Morella and Associates. Is that correct?
No.
Oh, wait.
That's-
Yeah. No, I'm
No,
sorry. Wait, I flipped over one page and got somebody else's resume.
No, I've just done.
So
freelance.
what was the answer to that?
I've just done a few freelance things. Some docs, some
Pretty much in
lawyers have asked-
retirement mode?
What's that?
You're a highly educated retiree then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like to.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, thank you.
I don't have any questions.
If you're not chosen in this alternate position, would you consider applying for the 2 other positions that are coming available, full positions?
On this board, yes.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
They're up at the end of this year. Okay,
Sure,
all right.
certainly.
All right, so if you don't get this position, then we'll put you
Yeah,
on
please,
for
you know, keep my
consideration for those.
application, you know, current.
Absolutely, that's what we'll do. Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you.
to see
Thank
you
you.
again,
Thank
Art.
you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you.
That's me.
Thank you. Coming in. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Services.
Sorry.
Don't fall over the table here, but
Thanks for coming in.
Counselor, pleasure.
Good luck,
Services Committee?
I'd like to call the Services Committee to order as soon as.
Staying here? Are there other people? For interviews? No. No.
No, there are other residents.
No. It's okay, while he's doing that, I'll get set up, move everything over here.
Have this on the back of
You
yours.
guys are okay with that?
What is that?
I don't know.
What's the matter?
Bill, do you have this on the back of yours?
Yeah, but not today.
Yeah, but
Oh, so she just gave it to us for
this is the
future.
19th.
What's that one for?
It's, no resident.
They're asking about Joseph Euler.
No resident. Oh, I shouldn't say that, one resident.
Okay,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call the Services Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda, the Fire Marshal's report for the month of June 2019 and the permit report for July 2019. Fire Marshal Stack, you have the floor.
congratulations on your Fire Inspector 3.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that, thank you. Okay, sorry, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Month of June was another extremely busy month for the 3 fire companies. We ran a total of 78 fire calls. A lot of those were storm-related, if you can remember back in June. So with that 78 calls, it brings us up to a grand total of 433. So we're well ahead of schedule where we were in the last couple of years, as far as runs are concerned. False fire alarms, we're moving quite along with them. We brought $700 in for false fire alarms, putting a grand total of $4,600 into the sinking fund for the fire apparatus replacement. Training will continue with the fire departments. After the summer months, we'll kind of ramp back up again a little bit more, but for the most part, we continuously moving quite along with there. Just this past Friday was the 3-company fire golf outing, and was well attended. And I want to extend a thank you to everybody that was able to make it out. Also, on behalf of the fire departments, they appreciate their effort, your efforts as well. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.
Are there any questions from council? Hearing none, any questions from the public? Okay, thank you.
Call to order the Public Works Committee meeting. Start with the Public Works activity report.
Good evening. You've all got copies of my June activity report. If anyone has any questions, I'll take them now, or you can email me later, and I'll get answers for you for whatever questions you have.
I'd like to thank you for your idea about resurfacing the bend on Grubs to help keep people on the road and off the wall down there. So I
It
hope
became
it works.
obvious that it was very slippery,
Yeah.
and we did post the signs for slippery when wet, and we were fortunate to have a paving company here that had some free time, so we got it taken care of quickly.
Thank you, I hope it helps.
You're welcome.
Mr. Sapani, was that slipperiness largely caused in wet conditions?
Mhm.
Is there any consideration to putting drainage grooves in the road there as an alternative for future?
I don't know that drainage is going to help it a whole lot. It probably what happened, it's a steep hill with a sharp curve. As people go up the hill, they're accelerating. As they're coming down, they're braking hard. It just caused the stone that was in the original asphalt to polish off, which creates a almost ice-like condition. I found out because there were a couple accidents up there. I happened to be on my way in one morning when it was raining and decided to come down the hill and see how bad it was. And as I entered the curve and put the brakes on, I slid down the hill myself. So at that point, we got the signs up right away and went ahead and made arrangements with the paving company to pave it.
Is this super pave product that you use with the more chunky aggregate?
This
do you
is,
think that'll
there's,
serve better in that condition?
there's what you call a skid resistance level. Most of our paving is at a G level, which is fine on normal road surfaces. We raised that up to an E level, which is, it's kind of the skid resistance level that you'll see on interstates and high volume roads. So it should take care of it.
Thank you. That's great.
When that pavement was torn off, it was awful quiet and traffic was awful slow on that curve.
I'll bet. Especially when they hit those 2 bumps.
Yeah, they slowed right down.
Review proposal received from Nagel Athletic Surfaces for filling cracks and resealing surfaces of the basketball and tennis courts at Devlin Memorial Park.
Okay, as you all know, I recommended rejection of the bids that we received for the resurfacing out here. One of the main reasons was that I got absolutely no bids for fencing. In talking with the fencing companies locally here, they're all booked up until well into October and the end of the year, which is why they all told me that they didn't bother to put a bid in on that work. Had they put a bid in on the work, when we had the last paving was in 2007, I believe. Had they put a bid in similar to the one that we got in 2007, it would have been another $40,000 on top of the bid for the paving and the color coding. So we rejected those. The only person that bid on the color coding, Nagel Athletic Surfaces, sent me a second proposal that they proposed to go out and fill the cracks, and there are some fairly large ones out there. They were going to fill them, put a fiber sort of a material over top of it, and then recoat the court's new color surface and put new lines on. They gave me several references of places that they've worked in the area. One of them was Moon Township, I believe it was at the high school. Bob Grimm took the time on his way out through there to take a look at them, and I guess you could tell that the fabric was there, but there were also some cracks there, which I went back and talked with the representative. The cracks out here are pretty significant, and he will not guarantee the work. He'll do the work, and he believes that he has a good product, but because of our weather conditions here and probably also with the proximity to the creek, he believes that at least some of those cracks are going to show up again in a year. We would hope to get using that process 5 to 7 years. I'm not convinced that that's really a good longevity for something like this. It's a $50,000 expense. I feel that we'd be better off to go out early, maybe even December, and rebid the whole project and find all of the fence companies, paving companies and whatnot, trying to build their schedule for the summer and hopefully get some better prices than we got with this year's bid.
Can we do,
Prices will be high?
I think the prices were what they were because of the time of year that we got it out and everybody was already filled up for the year. So they threw prices out there. If you want it, fine. If you don't want it, fine. You know, I mean, nobody actually told me that, but I kind of.
Mark, as you pointed out, they didn't exhibit much standing behind their product, no warranty, and
Right.
didn't seem like a very enthusiastic endorsement of what they proposed to do.
Right.
In terms of its longevity, for sure. So I think that's a sensible thing to do, what we're planning to do.
is there anything we can do to fill some of those really big cracks that, like if someone was walking on it with heels during community
We
day?
tried a couple of little things before with some sand and asphalt. We put some stone in it, and the sand in particular actually kind of disappeared underneath the existing asphalt. So we'll, for now, especially with Community Day coming, we'll probably fill them again with some small stone so that there's less of a trip hazard out there for,
Yeah.
during Community Day.
They might trip on the stone?
I would hope
On
not.
stone?
I'd rather they trip on the stone than get their foot cut in one of those cracks. It's,
Either way, it's good.
they're big. They're big cracks.
I think that's a good idea, waiting till the spring and see, maybe even if we want to do the whole thing, we'll just have to look at it then, I think.
As
that's
I
a good idea.
suggested, I think the way to do it would be to go out to bid in December, award in January,
Yeah, that's what I mean,
and then
for the spring. Mhm.
have the work done by probably the end of May.
For the use of the surfaces between now and then, is there any plan on filling in the cracks as this quote here suggests as possible?
We're as we just talked, I'm gonna fill them in with some stone and probably some sand for now. We're not gonna try to put an asphaltic material on top of it or anything, we're just gonna fill the cracks.
Is that using that right way crack and repair system?
No,
That's
no,
something.
we're just gonna use some small stone, Bill.
Okay.
Discuss the proposed replacement of a Massey Ferguson tractor with a brush cutter boom mower.
Okay, we've talked about this at least a couple of times through the year. We did get prices on replacing the tractor. The quotes that I got are above the budgeted amount of money for this year. We also talked about alternatives from time to time, and we've looked at, and Ken Allshouse from the Environmental Advisory Committee has researched various different kinds of weed control measures, spray-ons and pellets and so forth. I don't know, Ken, here tonight. Ken had asked me if I felt it would be good for him to come and possibly talk with you all about what he found. Briefly, especially with things that have kind of come out in the last few days here, the EPA apparently has made a statement that they don't believe that Roundup is as horribly dangerous as everybody is trying to make it out to be. Ken is a proponent of Roundup, and some of the other things that he found that are, I guess, quoted to be environmentally safe alternatives pretty much all contain salt. And my experience with having salt on lawns during the winter is that salt tends to kill grass, and if it's a heavy enough concentration, the only way to grow grass there again, or to grow anything on that, is to dig it out and put new soil in. So the spraying idea is still there. I was able to contact somebody from PennDOT and talked with them about their process, and their contractors in the area here this year charge by the hour to do spraying and or cutting. So it depends on the number of miles that they were going to do and hours per day. With the mower, one other thing that has come to light that I was not aware of, there are new state regulations that apparently require us to have what's called a shadow vehicle follow the machine around any time that he's cutting or riding down the road. There's not a spare truck in the building next door that could be used as a shadow vehicle, and that's one less employee that I have to do other work. I am going to apply for a grant to see if we can get a pickup truck that's compressed natural gas powered. MTSA has a couple. I've talked to Denny Blakely over there, and we can use their filling station to fuel it up. So we wouldn't have to go into that, but there is the expense probably of an employee, which adds to the cost of the machine of around $132,000, let's say, average. Again, because the money isn't budgeted for the machine, and this late in the year, I've recommended that if the cutting is the way we're going to go with it, then I recommend that we hold off, increase the budget for next year, and buy the machine next spring, and see where this thing goes with a grant to get a compressed natural gas pickup, so that we would have a truck that we can use as a shadow truck.
The truck that's under consideration here is already 23 years old, right? in that vicinity?
The machine.
The machine.
The machine is from 1996. That's when we bought it.
And what kind of life
It
expectancy?
was due to be traded off 3 years ago in 2016. In use during the summer of 2015, a farm tractor is built so that the clutch and brakes, what they call a wet brake and a wet clutch system, they're encased in the housing at the back of the tractor. The brakes went out of it, and to fix it, they had to take the tractor completely apart. They put new brakes in it, put new clutch in it. The cost was somewhere around $8,000 to do that. We had money budgeted to replace the machine in 2016, but because of the expense of that repair, I recommended that we hold off for at least a year and get our use out of the new brake and clutch system in that tractor.
Wait a minute. Your thinking at this point is to buy a new one or buy a used one? Or
They're
repair?
not available used. You cannot buy a used one, you cannot lease one.
So what do you envision as a solution? Is it a repair situation or replacement?
Replace.
It is
This is
replacement.
replace.
So I'm doing some little quick calculations here on with the trade-ins on these 3 different things that we have here. I know it's not in the budget, but I'm just looking, and then I'm looking at what the cost of the spraying are, and we can actually buy one cheaper than we can pay PennDOT to spray. And we don't have the chemicals. I mean, that's what the math is looking like here to me. Is that about right?
The spraying that I
It's
talked with.
$600 a mile. We've got 10 miles.
Right.
Okay.
But the new method that PennDOT uses is $128.40 an hour.
Oh.
The contractor that I talked to today, who has District 10, does all their work up there. I told him what kind of area we have. It's about 10 miles and some moving around in that. He thought he could probably get that done in 8 hours. So at $128 an hour, that's right around $1,000 to do the whole thing. Now, there may be the additional cost of a shadow vehicle. We're still looking into the possibility that because our roads are essentially low-volume roads, we may be able to get away on some of them without the shadow vehicle. But I don't have a definite answer on that yet.
Do you spray, how many times a year do you spray?
One time.
One time a year. Okay.
And that doesn't need cut first?
No. They do it in the spring, the pre-emergent mostly, that they spray. Sometimes some of the stuff that you see with PennDOT is later in the year because of the volume of area that they have.
Pre-emergent's not gonna touch the knotweed though, right?
Nothing will touch the knotweed. The only thing that kills the knotweed is you have to, if I remember correctly, you cut it, you spray it, you cut it, you spray it, and you might kill it. It's hard stuff to kill. The hogweed is very similar. It's very difficult to kill that once it gets started.
And we can't even go onto people's property if they've got it going up the banks or so.
Right. Which is, with the knotweed, like the patch that we have going up Grubbs Hill. We've cut it twice this year. We haven't sprayed it, but we did cut it twice. It started again. But even if we were able to do away with it, the whole hillside above it is covered.
Right, same
It's
with
gonna
Pine
drop
Creek
seeds.
and the same with Ingomar Road.
Right. It's gonna drop seeds and it'll just rejuvenate itself without, there's just really, it's hard to get rid of it. The only thing you can do is try to keep after it.
Well, I know I'm getting complaints right now over in Ingomar, and I think we've all heard it,
Yep.
because it's been impossible to keep up with it, so, I mean, I think we should plan on some type of a reasonable spraying
We can't
program.
cut Ingomar.
In the meantime,
correct?
what are we gonna do?
We can't even cut Ingomar.
Ingomar Road?
Right.
No, that's a state.
No, it wasn't Ingomar Road, it's in Ingomar, I've got a couple of
Okay.
side roads that are ours there.
Well, Ingomar Road itself coming from 19 this way is terrible.
Is the mower broken now?
No, we're not allowed to cut it, it's not our road.
It's just what,
I was talking about what Bill was talking about.
Yeah, what
He
are we
was
gonna
saying
do now?
about spraying.
No, it's-
Well, we have a mower now that works.
Right.
Yeah.
We just don't want to keep putting more money in, so he
Yeah.
could cut it if it's part of our 10 miles that we cut.
Right.
Well, and he's nearly gotten around everything now,
Okay.
but because of all the rain we've had, it's growing like quote unquote weeds again, so, it's all back. It could actually probably stand a second cutting at this point on a lot of it.
Should we consider cutting spray now to prep it for the spring, because there's a bunch of high stuff?
I'm not gonna claim to be any kind of a genius about weed control. Someone look at my lawn once and you'll realize that, but, I don't know that it would do any good to spray it right now. The stuff's already well developed, and most of it's gone to seed, so I'm thinking the pre-emergent in the spring is probably the best way to deal with it.
So that's what you answer the people that are calling him?
Well, we're still
Still
hitting,
cutting.
like
Still
Steve mentioned tonight that Harmony and Highland, I guess it was, he had a complaint from over there. And I thought the guys just cut that. I thought they just cut it the other day, but they'll
They're
get,
still up.
They may have cut it, but what they were talking about was, it looked like it almost needs weed whack right around the corner of the guardrail.
Exactly.
well, and that's one of the other problems with the boom mower.
Right.
You can't get around guide rail with it. It's-
No, you need to get a
Yeah,
person
this
in
is
there.
Right,
you know.
right near the guide rail.
Mhm.
I like your suggestions. I think that's a reasonable thing to do.
Valley Road is the latest one I've got.
Valley, yeah. He was, I think he was on Valley today.
Okay.
I think he was over there today.
Discuss a proposal received from Insight Pipe Contracting LLC for the rehabilitation of a 24-inch storm sewer at Prince Andrew Court.
This is just, this is a CoStar's bid. If you recall back to last July or so, when the bids came out, we chose not to award to the low bid contractor through COG. So we've held off. This piece of pipe is 460 feet long. It's out of the cul-de-sac on Prince Andrew Court and down through the woods towards Rochester Road. I've had it TV'd, and it's another one of the polymer-coated linings originally lined inside the pipe. The polymer coating on the inside is all cracked and it has formed bladders, and the bottom of the pipe in several places is rusted out. So we need to do something with it, and this process is the quickest, the easiest, and in the long run the cheapest, because the end of that pipe is pretty far up into the woods off of Rochester Road. So to get up to it with equipment, we'd have to build a road and move the pipe up in there and pull the old pipe out, put new in. This way, they can go in, clean it out real good, line it, and it's done. So it's, again, it's under CoStar, so it's just a matter of council approving at the business meeting, approving the work.
Review a plan for the sidewalk on Grubbs Road, and I think we lost Bruce. Oh, you're doing it? Okay.
Good evening.
Thank you. That was a lot of work, putting all that together for council. I appreciate all those numbers. It was very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, I didn't say also thank you for painting the gates at Ballpark. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Mike Albright from Gateway Engineers. Just talking about some updates to the Grubbs Road sidewalk project. So just a quick summary. So last time we presented two options at the April 8th council meeting. Option one being a 4-foot wide sidewalk with no dedicated bike lane, and option two being a 4-foot wide sidewalk and 4-foot wide road expansion for bikes. It was decided that option one was the way to go with for that layout, with just the 4-foot wide sidewalk and no dedicated bike lane. So the layout's just 2-foot wide landscape strip off of the curb, then you have the 4-foot wide sidewalk. A couple other additions to the layout. We added some bump outs along there, just allow for an area for pedestrians to pull over, similar to the ones along McCandless Drive. And then also we added some delineator posts that are going to be proposed to be added along the bridge And this is just going to be a temporary solution until a pedestrian bridge is installed along there. So a little tough to see, but these are the project limits. So we're starting up at the intersection of Grubbs and McCandless Drive, and then kind of stopping short of the bridge, adding those little delineators along the road, and then picking it back up on the other side of Offman Lane, and then stopping short of the right-of-way of Ingomar Road. And here's some proposed future connections like I talked about. Again, kind of tough to see, but at the very beginning, it would be connecting the proposed sidewalk with the existing sidewalk across the street along McCandless Drive. And then also there'd be a connection proposed from Parkland Drive across Grubbs to the new sidewalk. And then that last connection piece being just the pedestrian bridge that crosses the creek. And we did submit a grant for this through the DCED multimodal grant on July 31st. And I think the price for these connections came at $278,811. Lastly, just want to talk a little about schedule. So just a little tentative schedule here. Doing the advertisement, bidding, awarding the contract through this August, September, and then hoping, I guess, a tentative construction start date of October 7th, and then a construction end date of May 31st. So to kind of explain that, a couple of the considerations there, we use the May 31st deadline date just to allow some flexibility. Hopefully get some more favorable bids from contractors. At this point, they're kind of booked up for the most part to the end of the year, so that kind of gives them a flexibility if they can squeeze it in this year, or they can start at the beginning of next year, as long as they finish up by May 31st. And then also didn't want to start before Community Days on September 14th. And then I guess the idea would be here at the council meeting on September 23rd. That's when hopefully accept the low bid of the project and then start construction after that. So just a few updates. Any questions?
And the project is still estimated to be within budget.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
I have a question on the connections, the $278,000.
Mhm.
What exactly is that? Some special?
Well, the big thing being the bridge that crosses Pine Creek.
I see.
And then I guess if we were to do the mid-block crossing to Parkland Drive, there might be some lights involved with that, some crosswalks. There's a little more involved with doing the mid-block crossing like that.
I see.
And then a few more ramps to add to it.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you familiar with the bridge? I mean, have you looked at it like with your own eyes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was down there, and on the right side, which is where the proposed sidewalk would be, there's like this much space between the line and the bridge wall, whatever that's called. But on the other side, there's like this much space between the line and the bridge wall. It seems like that if you move the lines over, that you would have enough space to walk on there.
Well, the idea is to be temporary. I think the ultimate goal is to have that pedestrian bridge, and so I guess we're banking on hoping we win that grant and then getting the pedestrian bridge in next year, and that's really the preferred access. So for now,
but are you just kind of
If we
made
don't
that
get
all
that
null and
grant.
void. There's walking space on the wrong side there.
Mhm.
Can you just repaint the lines? Our road, can we just repaint the lines to have that space on the side of the road that we want it on?
we could look into it. It's a PennDOT bridge, so there'll be some coordination with PennDOT to see if they
Okay,
have
I don't
any say
even know
in
if
it or
it's
not.
possible,
Mhm.
But.
There's about 4 feet from where the white line is to the edge of the bridge on the right-hand side.
Right, exactly. Well, it depends which way you're walking. On the far side, not our side, the side we want. But it seems like there would be enough room on there to continue a 4-foot sidewalk if there's 4 foot on that bridge. Maybe without a bridge, without a pedestrian bridge.
I guess that would you need to have a mid-block crossing at that
That's
point to go on the other side.
$90,000 savings
Mhm.
with a bridge.
I think Kim is talking about the possibility of repainting the
Restriping.
lines, restriping in order to be able to have more
Because they're not
shoulder.
even close to being even.
Right. Yeah, I think we just have to run that by PennDOT because I guess that is their bridge. So I don't know if they have certain clearances or standards. I don't know if they want to have that line a foot or two off of the edge of the bridge. Maybe they have to have that certain clearance. But that's something.
Kim, are you simply saying that when you look at the road itself, if you drew an imaginary midline right down the middle of the road, there's more room on the side opposite the the town hall, for example.
Yes.
This is the town,
Okay?
this is the bridge. I was riding my bike down there, and the white line is like way over here on this side, and the white line is like way over here on this side. So it seems to me that you could, I don't know.
What is the scale to this drawing?
This is to scale. It seems to me
She needs an
that you
art
could put
class.
this here and this here.
She needs to look up
and
what
this
the
gonna
scale
be-
is.
This would go right. I think it's just worth looking at. It could be a super easy solution. And I looked at that, I'm like, why aren't these even? And they weren't
But
even
if
close.
if it's a PennDOT, maybe they have a reason they do.
Well, that's what his job is, to find that out. That's why I'm bringing it up. So what do we, are there any,
No, we're gonna be moving forward with the bid. We just wanted to let everyone know where we stood with this, since it's been a matter of discussion and, that we are continuing to move forward with it.
Thank you.
thanks.
Review resolution on multimodal transportation funds for Wexford Flats.
Okay, and this is something that came up after we were adopting the resolutions for the other multimodal projects last month. This suggestion came from Representative Turzai's office to submit a joint application with Pine Township for multimodal funds through the Department of Community and Economic Development. The town did apply for a Green Light Go grant through the Department of Transportation to upgrade signals in the Wexford Flats, and Pine has done the same thing. Sarah Kennedy from Representative Turzai's office suggested that this be submitted as a fallback possibility if the Green Light Go applications are not approved, or grants are not approved. She does not expect us to have to use this multimodal funding to approve or to upgrade these lights. So consequently, it's her feeling that we would not be competing against ourselves by submitting this additional grant with Pine. So it's just a matter of precaution on her part to look at all possible funding sources to get the Wexford Flat signals upgraded. That's essentially the.
so if we get the green light go, then we give this up, or we get them both?
If we get the Green Light Go, we would use that money for the Wexford Flats, and we would push for the multimodal to either do this project or up on Old Bridge for the
Okay.
sidewalk.
Okay, I see.
Is there any questions from town council?
No, I'm just glad we're addressing those signals up there. They've been a real thorn.
Is there any public comment on the agenda items? I will close the Public Works Committee meeting.
I'd like to call to order the zoning committee meeting for August 12th, 2019. The first thing on the agenda is review submitted changes to the proposed implemental comprehensive plan for final approval. You probably have all the changes that were submitted, or the rewrites of them, in your package. Sort of towards the end. Starts with a page 49, which is how to read this chapter. So community activities, page 49. Does everyone have that? Okay. Yeah, okay. Towards the back, and then were based on comments heard in July zoning committee meeting and the public hearing on July 22nd, 2019. And other comments proposed changes have been made to the draft of the implemental comprehensive plan, starting with change 49. Do you want to go over them?
all I did was, there were a lot of comments about the community center and how everybody felt, or a lot of people thought that the community center was a requirement of the plan, and indeed, the community center is not a requirement of the plan, and the only reason the community, and it wasn't even one of the top priorities of the plan. However, it was a requirement of town council that they address, that the consultant address a community center. In November of 2015, council gave the direction to us, to the town manager and myself, to, when we wrote the RFP, to make sure that there was a community center addressed within it. So what we ended up doing was, and I quoted both the town council's comments from November 15 and the RFP. The RFP states roughly what's expected of there as we went of the consultant. So what we thought that as we went through the planning process.
Oh, these are the changes in yellow, right?
In yellow, the
Yeah.
changes are all in
Oh,
yellow.
yellow.
This is an entirely new section in yellow.
I had this page several times when I looked at it. Where is it? Is it page 49?
Page
Yeah,
49.
page 49.
No, come, just grab it, grab it right out of your
I don't
agenda.
understand, but why is 49 different on my page?
This is the change
The
page.
community activities.
Oh, okay, okay.
This is the change page. So we're only going over the changes, not the. So anyways, what happened was, the steering committee did not think that the community center rose to the point of being one of the top 4 items, but we still required it. Town council required that the community center be addressed. That's why in the appendix that you see a section on the community center. It's not a requirement, it's not even a suggestion, town council required it, and it's in there. So that's what this whole section's about the community center. All council wanted was an idea as to what a community center would be like. So this should address all comments about that people have made that we're requiring a community center be built. We are not requiring a community center be built.
And there's page 50.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I can make a comment?
Sure.
Yeah, I appreciate this change, but there are a number of other references throughout the plan that do reference the inclusion of the community center. Under the study includes next steps in the event McKinley decides to build a modest community center, and programs and private events. And in another section that talks about the other organizations and rental spaces competing with McCandless, the programs. And so I think this is right. I think this change is right, but I think there may be some more cleanup in there to be consistent throughout the document. I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want just to continue, Greg?
Yeah, well, go ahead, page 50.
Page 50,
Minor change.
the former town manager said, hey, we had all these other programs that weren't listed in the original one, and what we did was, John Bajarski added the other ones that are in yellow, that weren't in. We consolidated the entire concept into 2018 and 2019, so we added the ones that weren't included previously. The Blazer Drive section, page 81, is a complete rewrite of the Blazer Drive section. It appeared as though, I can tell you exactly what. I gave a narrative to the consultant. They quoted me verbatim. It wasn't intended to do that. It was just to give them a background about a history of what happened on Blazer Drive. And they also did not include both sides of Blazer Drive. We have the Pine Creek Plaza part of Blazer Drive, and we have the Rave Cinema Trader Horn side of Blazer Drive. So I thought it was important to clarify those two, and we also explained what is happening on the redevelopment is on Blazer Drive with Trader Horn. So we just explained all that and took out the whole recent history of Blazer Drive, which was never intended to be on there. And it had some suppositions, we just took it out to clarify. Pages 90 through 94. I'm sorry, 90 through 90, 90 through 92, 94 too, yeah, but 94 is only the deer resistant part.
Yeah.
90 through 92. We had several comments, thank you, about the RC zone district and how we were, the ordinance or the comp plan was contemplating having a group together to discuss the possibility of expanding the RC district. We took all that out of there. We're only focusing on the RC district and everything that we put in.
The current RC district.
The current RC district, yeah. So we're not, all we're doing is looking at modifying the language within the RC district, which I think everybody agrees needs to be done because the RC district hasn't lived up to the expectations of 1992 that we originally started with. So this is, and the idea here is to get everybody together and have focus groups and get residents and developers together and discuss, and the town, and discuss what should go in there, how we should rewrite the ordinance. So that's 90 through 92. I think we took everything out of that that referred to it. If anybody happens to see any reference to a zoning map, let me know. We'll get
And
it
there's
out.
no reference in there to Hillview or Prescott. Yeah.
Right, yeah, we took all that out.
Okay.
Everything that even
Yes.
referenced it, even when we talked about other language, we took all that out of there. There's no reference whatsoever to it. Pages 93 and 94, we just added, there was a lot of comments about, and actually some of these comments came up during some of our meetings, that we should, everything around here should be deer, all the planning should be deer resistant.
Should be what?
Deer resistant. Yeah, we learned that
Still
from
not
this.
getting to it.
Deer, they're like
Deer
mammals that
resistant. Deer resistant.
run around and eat everything. Deer.
I guess I'm just not, I understand what that means and I can guess what it, but what's the concept? I don't get.
Deer
Plantings.
resistant
Deer don't eat.
plantings.
Oh,
Planting.
plants that are resistant to being
Yeah.
eaten by deer.
Right.
Yes, now I understand, okay.
Sometimes it's hard for me to get.
No, but now I understand what you're trying to say.
Okay. Glad you asked. It's always good to clarify. Okay, page 112. We had a lot of discussion about why we don't have stormwater management in our comp plan. We don't have stormwater management in our comp plan. I thought it was important to point it out, and I'm glad everybody brought it up. We have a very intensive stormwater management plan. Mark's still here? Mark's not here. Mark Sabina has a plan for replacing storm sewers that he's been doing for years. We've done studies on our storm sewer system in terms of volume control. We have floodplain ordinances, we have stormwater ordinances. We have our MS4 municipal separate storm sewer system regulations that we have to follow, which is an unfunded mandate through the state and federal governments. And we have a new one called our PRP, our pollutant reduction plan, which is a major unfunded, which is going to cost us, well, it was, we were in the millions of dollars for things like that. It was going to cost us to do that. Who knows how much it'll cost over the next 10, 15 years. But we thought there was no reason. We have that plan in place, plans in place. We're continually modifying those plans, and it's a whole separate planning system from the comprehensive plan. We didn't want to interfere with that. We've had meetings with neighbors, and we're well on our way with that. And we're also working with other municipalities. The county, for a perfect example, is Cindy Kirk, the council representative for Allegheny County for this area, brought in Allegheny County when we were having the problems on Highland Road. We felt as though Allegheny County had a lot to do with that, and some things that they needed to do. So after several meetings and after about a year of planning, Allegheny County agreed to help with a new storm source system along Highland Road. So those are the kind of things that's all happening outside the comprehensive plan. We didn't feel as though that there was a need to reiterate that within the plan, and we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to make improvements to our stormwater management system and our floodplain system.
Bruce, just a quick question. In general, what is are there underlying ordinances for the stormwater management that would, and as well as county regulations, I think, too, right?
Yeah, we have, the new county ordinance required us to change our ordinance, which we did. So we have our local ordinance, stormwater ordinance. We also have the FEMA floodplain ordinance, which we were required to do. And so we have those two are the two primary regulations. Plus, we have regulations that we have to follow from DEP.
In other words, I mean, one of your basic points, I think, is that we have these existing, carefully thought-through ordinances and regulations. There's no point in trying to fight with those and to redo them in the context of the implementable plan, right?
Yeah, right, we're already doing it.
But that's
So
the
thank you.
that's what drives the whole consideration to chuck it from the implementable plan.
Exactly.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment? Bruce, I am one of those advocates, thank you, sir. I'm one of the advocates for stormwater management. From this perspective, and I obviously I wasn't clear enough in articulating at least my concern, and others I think as well that spoke. Most of what you're talking about is prospectively improving the stormwater situation, bank stabilization, conveyance. I am referencing all of the many detention and retention facilities we have throughout the town that have been designed since the 1980s. And I'm talking about climate change, I'm talking about the severity of the storms and their ability to have adequate capacity. We have areas in this town that are significantly flooding on a much more regular basis. And I'm not aware of a program strategically to go back to those facilities and increase the capacity to protect these people from the flooding. That's what I'm talking about. I respect that, appreciate the MS4s, I appreciate the bank stabilization, the conveyance. The reason we have bank stabilization issues is because of the erosion caused by over surcharging facilities that are just dumping way more water than the banks were designed for.
Exactly, and I appreciate that.
So that's where I'm
comment.
coming from.
And I appreciate that. We do have that program in place. Not necessarily everyone is going to be increased, but we do have an inspection program, for example, focusing on Highland Road, because that's an area we've had massive problems. We have addressed our stormwater facilities and increased the capacity of the stormwater facility, which is up above that in, geez, I forget the name of the plan, but we have a plan up above there where we have controlled the stormwater along Harmony Road, and we have also increased the capacity of the stormwater facility, which detains all that water.
You talking about the trolley court?
Trolley court, yeah. I always forget the name of the plan. I don't know why, but trolley court, so everybody knows it.
Caboose court?
What is it?
Caboose? Trolley
No,
caboose?
no, it's not. But anyways, we do have plans in place to do that. Now, does council want to increase that? That's gonna be up to them. I don't know what our budget is for do that, but we have an annual inspection program where we go back and make modifications to our stormwater facilities on a regular basis. I think we do about 4 or 5 a year, maybe more.
Yeah, and I have, subsequent to our conversations, I have been talking with the stormwater engineer, asking him to go out again, look at those plans, do a review of all of the ponds, and give me a list of those ponds that we could easily retrofit in order to increase capacity. So they're already in the process of doing that. I mean, if the council wishes, we can certainly try to formalize that in some way. And I agree that every development, every redevelopment that occurs has to take a good hard look at stormwater management, has to take a look at volume control, it has to take a look at retention. Look at best management practices in order to just take care of the water on site as opposed to, pushing it off onto somebody else. We're doing that on a daily basis or weekly basis. We meet monthly with the engineers to go over projects. We can try to formalize. I'm just, right now off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure how we formalize that, but we can certainly work toward that goal.
I raise the issue because this is actually our first time as a body to deliberate on this document. We really have gotten a lot of input and heard a lot of public comment, but as a group here, we've never had a chance to deliberate. I think everybody at this table wants to reduce to flooding in our town, when this document is approved and passed, it will become a guide for our capital budgeting to some degree. And I want stormwater management in terms of prior capacities that need to be improved to prevent some of this flooding. It's just been going on and on. I mean, we're trying to solve it by increasing the conveyance, and then that moves it downstream to the next guy. At some point, we have to accept the fact that some of our capacity that was built in is no longer adequate.
And
I want to see it be a priority when it competes against the other good things in this plan. So I'm asking the council to consider including that type of a capacity program over the next 5 to 10 years to eliminate this constant flooding. That's where I'm coming from.
It would seem to me it would be a priority no matter what. I mean, whatever's in the
Agreed.
plan. I mean,
Agreed.
Right.
it would override anything.
And that's why we didn't put it in here. We made that, well, we had a lot of, it wasn't like we just arbitrarily decided not to put it in. We had this discussion at the very beginning when we were starting this. It's like, and this came from the town manager, it's like, we've got our budgets established, we have procedures established, we have meetings that we've had with the public. Let's just keep away from that. There's no use us wasting time doing that in the comprehensive plan when we're already doing that. And we have a comprehensive stormwater management plan, which we're continually improving on.
Well,
And your capacity issues, very well taken. We don't want to pass things down. And we have looked at Andy always looks at that, Andy Banfield from PVE always looks at that. And we, like I said, I think we do about 4 or 5 a year that we do, stormwater facilities that we redo. And you budget for it. And you can increase that budget if you want to. I mean, that's up to you guys if you want to do it. And we can look at greatly increasing capacity. I mean, sometimes we have the land to do it. The budgets for that, we've got to, that's what you guys do.
I just, ladies and gentlemen, I just feel like, sidewalks and multimodal corridors are important to us, and so this plan has an inventory of those and recommendations, and programming, community activities are important to us, and we have a complete inventory in here, to the best of our ability at this point in time, of what's available. We don't have any, we have green space in here, an inventory of our green space. We do not have any stormwater detention facilities in here, no inventory.
We do have the inventory. That's what I'm telling you is we have that.
And what I'm asking
You
you
want to
is to
include it in
include
here.
it in
Should
our
be
comprehensive plan,
So,
because I think
okay.
it's that important.
Okay.
Now, that's for this body, again, this is
That's
the
for
first
you to
time we've had
decide,
to deliberate.
and
but-
like I said, that's up to you guys to make those decisions, and if you want to put that in here, we can go back and do that. We have all the information established already.
This is just a copy and paste?
Well, we'll have to go back and, I would have to write.
What difference would it make to put it in here?
Well, the way that we did this, we established priorities. That is its own priority. And council made that a priority years ago.
So it's like security.
Yes.
Security, like, we don't have the police force in here.
Right.
Because it's already established and we're already doing that.
Right.
We don't have our fire department in here, that's established and doing it.
Exactly.
So, if I'm understanding this, stormwater is so important of its own thing, that it is its own thing, and it wasn't included in this, kind of like safety
And
and
maybe
police.
because we're gonna have to continually change it if we continue to have flooding. So maybe that's why it needs to be in here.
Oh,
But we can change it without it being in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, we would, definitely that is gotta be a priority. I
Right,
mean,
right,
that's
right.
what
Right,
they're telling
it's
us.
Yeah.
beyond,
Yeah. Every single thing.
this,
isn't
everything in
here.
here is what we recommend trying to do. This is something that we have to do.
And we're already doing.
Yeah.
To some, we can do better,
I think the difference between comparing the stormwater issue to police and public safety is that's an operating expense. And these, when we look at this, we're really talking about capital expenses. And that's what makes it strategic. And that's frankly the difference.
So we chose to do the implementable comprehensive plan, if I could go back a ways. Years ago, Cranberry did a strategic plan, a 25-year plan, where they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars setting out capital expenses and budgeting that along with a comprehensive plan. So we chose not to go that route. One thing we've always been, planning and zoning in McCandless has always been very focused, and we wanted to keep it that way. So we chose not to take that strategic route with a 25-year plan and budget out that far. Now, Bob and Tricia do budget out quite a ways, and we have a 10 and 15-year plan, I know, for budgeting. And for stormwater management, I think we go out 15 years, if I'm not mistaken, on our capital plan, but I'm not positive about that. That's not my area. So anyways, that's up to you guys. If you want to change the focus of the comprehensive plan, that's up to you.
I'm just prepared to say that whatever we're doing now isn't cutting it.
Isn't what?
It isn't cutting it. And the storms are getting, and the severity and the regularity of 100-year storms is increasing. And I hate to be the only one here ringing the bell for this.
No,
but
you're not.
it's-
We all know
but
that.
I really think
Actually.
it matters.
It definitely matters, there's no question. And I
No,
think-
definitely.
And there's, nobody's saying it doesn't matter. I think
Yeah.
what we're saying is, it is such a priority that we have addressed it entirely separately and
individually.
continue to address it on a regular
Right.
basis.
I kind of like it, almost it being its
Its own
separate,
entity.
own important thing, so
Yeah.
it's
Right,
not
I like it
competing
like
with
that,
anything
too.
in here, it is its thing.
Right.
Now, this is what we try to do, that is what we have to do.
Then let me just be blunt and ask, then Bruce has suggested we could increase the funding for our capacity improvements. Are we
Yeah.
willing as a group to put that cost need ahead of the things that are in this comprehensive plan?
Oh,
I
yeah.
think when we look at our budget, that's when we make those decisions, that's gonna happen in
Yep.
about 2 months.
It's non-discretionary,
Right,
really.
I think we
Yeah.
have to do that.
So,
Well, it's been
No, I
discretionary
mean,
because
but
I
it's-
don't think we've been spending enough.
We can't be sitting here and having
Well-
people flooded off the,
Well,
out of their homes.
that's what's happening
Yeah,
now.
I understand.
but
Yeah.
we'll be looking at our budget, right? Bob's putting it
Already
together right
looking at
now,
it.
so, we'll be looking at that and we're
Talking to Andy.
expressing that that's a priority.
You
So
are
our
talking to
stormwater
Andy?
needs will be
Yeah.
a priority above these
Yeah, right.
things. Okay,
Exactly.
all
Well,
right.
and we can even expand the language that Bruce has been in here to emphasize that,
Capacity
Yeah,
improvements
add
in
capacity.
existing detention facilities. That's really what I'm talking about here, folks.
But
I get the rest. The rest is covered here.
my feeling is that every.
Yeah, I should have put that into it, so I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, I think every aspect of development that you will find within this comprehensive plan has a stormwater element to it. And that has to be taken into consideration, whether it's redevelopment, whether it's trails or whatever, there are stormwater issues associated with those. But we have to, regardless of what we do, we focus on the stormwater as well. Okay. We can,
I think we
Adjust the
focus on
language.
stormwater maintenance, just swell. But I think I'm talking about capital investment.
no,
And,
I see where you're
and
going.
I'm disappointed that it didn't get into the plan. I'm disappointed council doesn't support that. That's, please, thank you for the comments.
The next few pages, I didn't highlight anything, these were pages,
Hang on, just one second. Bill, does that mean that you were a proponent of putting these things into the plan? I mean,
A stormwater inventory and I've been saying this multiple times. This isn't the first time I brought this to the table, and it's just largely been set aside.
Who is opposed to doing that?
Well, I don't know. I'm not opposed to doing it, I'm just saying that if we do it, we have to completely reorganize the whole process. We established a process early on for the implementable comprehensive plan, where the steering committee gave guidance as to what happened. We had several public meetings on it. And you are the final determiners. And 3 people from this board were appointed to be on the steering committee and helped give guidance to what happened. And we had this conversation in the beginning, decided not to do it. There's nothing saying we can't go back and do it again, but it's not following the procedures that we established in the very beginning.
but the areas that Bill's talking about are,
Covered.
are addressed.
they are addressed.
They are addressed, okay, so they are addressed in our MS4, all those,
And they're addressed in much more detail than we have
Okay,
here.
okay,
We've
all
got
right,
tremendous
so-
engineering detail on that. We don't have that in the comprehensive plan.
Okay. I think that's fine with me, if we, as long as we have it covered somewhere.
And we're gonna continue to, so I like what Bill said about, you know, I could add that wording into here to help cover that. And, Bill, maybe you and I can help with, you can help me with some of the wording on the priority issue.
If it's the will of the council, sure.
So, because I'm just trying to think of how I can word that, and I'm not sure how I can word it.
The other thing that's crossing my mind, I'd like to take a look at the stormwater ordinance that we adopted in November, December, that tied back to the county 167 plan, just to see if that could be amended to incorporate a stronger provision for retrofitting, addressing those issues. That may be another way for us to address that.
Yeah, what Bill's saying is we ought to do it. We already make developers do it. When developers are developing, they've got to change the capacity if they're redeveloping. For example, well, perfect example, oh, you guys, we haven't got to you yet. Down here on Blazer Drive. Perfect example is they had to increase the capacity of the stormwater facility as part of their development. And they also had to increase volume control, they have to increase rate control, and they have to do water quality. So there's three things. I don't know if you ever saw the old stormwater facility that was down there. It was one of the very early iterations. Greg, you were at that meeting.
Yeah, I was.
There's a great improvement in the volume control and stuff. So that's an example of what a redevelopment does. So we already have that in our ordinance. We could make that even more strict though. We could make them go back as if it was a whole new development and do that. We also make, they have an option of reducing pavement and adding green space to it, which they also did. So they did two things down there.
Thank you.
The last few pages, it was mentioned early on that we were a little too strong on hiring staff, and we sort of found, I asked the consultant to go back, I didn't have anything to do with rewriting this, but the consultant toned down requiring hiring staff for recreation. We never said that we wanted to hire staff, and so we asked them to tone that down a little bit, and they did. That recommendation will have to come from the activities committee. So that's what those last few pages did. And those were the changes that we did since
You
our
mean,
last meeting.
sorry, you mean the implementations, what says, the page that speaks to the implementation steps?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Yes. So that's not a recommendation, and it still may be too strong,
I
I'm
know,
not sure.
but I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but I know from our prior discussions that there are, that some of that are contiguous and nearby municipalities have substantially more people devoted to this activity than we do. And
Yeah, we've used existing staff and town council.
We can hire without this telling us.
I know, but I'm just saying that there's a reason why that some of our numbers are what they are.
Right, yes, there was. But
Right.
it wasn't necessarily a recommendation of our committee to say that we should hire somebody. The recommendation was we should look at hiring, at the potential for, or do we need somebody? And so that's all part of the, it's all potential stuff. It came across too strong in a lot of our opinions.
Mr. Betty, strategy 2 still says higher park and recreation.
Yeah, when I
staff
look at
committee.
that, that's one of the things that I thought they should tone that down. If you read down, it tones that down some.
You're talking about, under strategy 2 on page 129?
129, yeah.
Yeah, it says hire park and staff as, rec staff as needed.
As needed.
And that still may be a little bit too strong.
In other words, the steering committee never made a recommendation to
We,
hiring staff.
we discussed it heavily. The recommendation they gave was based on national standards, that we should have recreation staff. And we said that we are not necessarily, how we put it, we aren't necessarily a national standard. We're town of McCandless. We don't necessarily follow them, you know, we don't have to follow that rule of the national standard, so we asked them
Thank
to
you.
tone it down some. And we could go back and look at toning that down even more if you'd like. So if you
We
have
might
specific
change-
recommendations,
You might change it to doing research on hiring.
yeah.
You use that word to soften it a little bit.
Well, if you look at the steps are more specific. I don't think we can deal with it now.
Each step is, yeah, it says this town manager will develop and do all these other things.
Yeah, I
But doesn't that come out of the activities committee, that this has to be a recommendation from the activities committee first?
Yes, I think
Okay.
we gotta make sure that that's that's clear. We have to make sure that that's clear, and I'm not sure that we're doing that. So I think we have to.
These steps are what we would be approving here, as I read it, unless there's some process, and I'd like to talk through a little bit the process of how this gets implemented as a group. But step one here says we will begin the process of creating a staff position. That's right out of the gate. And who here is willing to raise taxes to create another staff position? Until we have some type of a study, this language is far too strong.
Is this new language or?
You know
This
what?
is Paschik language from what he said. This is
From what I'm
consultant
looking
language.
at here, I may have given you the wrong, I may have given you the old one here. I'm not sure, I just read the first 2 pages, 129 is different. Let's see if I have that. I'll give you the one. She may have sent me the wrong pages.
It's,
Also said-
I can certainly understand that it's over a 300-page document. And while you're looking for that, I'd like, as we deliberate here for the first time, I'd like to discuss the thought of engaging in a process ourselves to truly deliberate and review these issues. There are many community comments that were given to us that were not addressed in these changes by the planning commission. They don't have to, I get that. They're not the final arbiters. I think fair weight should be given to all of these concerns. Significant concerns, quite frankly, in my opinion. The idea of prioritization. Now perhaps the steering committee didn't feel that it was their responsibility or purview to, even though it was suggested a number of times, to provide some prioritization guidance in these things. We are talking about multi-million-dollar plans. All of them have these first steps, and we, as a governing body, aren't giving any guidance right now to them. We're kicking the can down the road, and I think right in the very, very first section, active transportation, we have 3 corridors. While one of them, the Babcock corridor, is clearly the lowest cost on the conceptual budget side, it's not necessarily prioritized first. We talk about low-hanging fruit, but when you read the details, it talks about beginning a study for the Pine Creek corridor, as well as other corridors. And in fact, it references Pine Creek several times, suggesting that somebody, the writer, perhaps it was the consultant, liked the Pine Creek corridor at $5.5 million better than.
Indeed, had chosen that one
Yes.
over Babcock.
And we need to, I think, just discuss it. I support all 3 corridors, but I'd like to
But
provide
won't we
guidance.
discuss this at a later date, right, once this plan is implemented, and then discuss which plan we want to take up as
But
something
then
the council
aren't
wants to
you
do?
okaying, if we're voting for it, then you're okaying everything that's in here?
No, we aren't okaying
No.
anything that's in here.
Exactly.
This
We're not
is
okaying
this is saying
anything.
this is what we are striving to look into over the next 10 or 20 years?
So I have the intent and purpose. This is our PDF that we gave to
RFP.
Patrick, RFP, PDF. Intent and purpose. The town of McCandless is seeking proposals for an implementable comprehensive plan. The implementable plan must focus on identifying community issues, steps to address the issues, persons or groups responsible for addressing the issues, and financing. Sources of financing should be identified. The emphasis should be determining the needs and desires of the community. A variety of techniques must be utilized to make this determination. As a general guide to developing an implementable comprehensive plan, please refer to, and then it gives a reference to what a plan goes. So what this is, what we paid Patrick to do is to come in, talk to the community, all the input, all the breakout sessions with our steering committee, and the community said, these are the things we as a community would like the town to do. So we can say, we think these are good ideas. We adopt this document as things that we know the community would like to have done, or at least some people in the community. That's why there's some people for and some people against. And then we decide, if we decide that we want to do our whatever paths that we want, north, south, east, west, whatever, we sit down and we look at those. This is a jumping off point. They say, oh, we think this one for whatever reason, but council still holds 100% control over everything. So when we adopt this, we don't have to go this. These are their recommendations, steps they recommend to a process. If you look at our old comprehensive plan, it was extremely vague. So this is a how-to if you want to guide, which is kind of nice because it helps you if that's the way you want to go. So, and I think that's the thing that we can't get past is, oh, if we adopt this, we have to do this, and we're going to hire a rec director. These are the things that the community and a consultant that we paid $87,000 to come in and help us prioritize what the community wants. So if we decide we don't want to fund that, or the community wants it but they don't want to pay for it, then we say, well, we got to wait on that.
Well, I
So-
think that there are some, are you all done?
No.
Yeah.
You know, I
Just-
pontificate indefinitely.
I can't absorb all that at one shot, but for example, we were talking, I knew I saw this somewhere, there are some statements throughout the plan that suggests, I'm looking at page 18 here at this point, that suggests a certainty and suggests that decisions have been made when they really haven't been made. For example, under the initial to-do list, it says, create an active transportation advisory committee to lead to the next steps on Pine Creek Trail Corridor or the other high priority routes. And what's that?
Yeah.
Right.
But it just seems to me that probably what's intended there is that that's one of the things. Clearly, Pine Creek's one thing to consider, as well as Babcock, because we've had extensive discussions on both. But this when I read this sounded like it was endorsing the Pine Creek alternative. That's all. And I think
Right, but this is their recommendation. This is their, like.
well, it's going to become ours when we vote on it.
It's not.
It
It really isn't.
It does not.
You know, it's more of a thing of we are recommending that we, or whoever's next, looks into this. All of these things, they look into it. It's not saying we do. Just going back to Bill's page 129, the implementation steps. To me, I would almost be able to say you could change 2 wills to may and fix the whole problem.
Makes it
Well,
softer.
that,
Right.
yeah.
But
I think that's a
it
good
doesn't
suggestion.
matter if it
McCandless
says
may begin the
will.
process. Well, I understand that, but to me, that ends it.
Say what we mean.
Yeah.
And I totally see where you're coming from, because that's actually where I'm coming from, is this is a recommendation, and we are recommending that this council or future councils look into doing these things. But if you're worried about, because it's not, there's no way that we could do this without voting on it as a council, even after we recommended doing this. Doing simple things like changing will to may ends the whole conversation. It ends this whole difficulty. And there's only two of them. There's only two wills in here, one there and one there.
Oh, there's another 100.
Well, but in this
100
particular
I
section.
think that's
I
right.
think, yeah, we've got to soften that some more. It's, as I read it, I didn't see any changes between, I just read quickly and compared 2 pages. She may have sent me the wrong pages, or maybe there are things in there that I'm missing. But anyways, going back to the idea of what this isn't an ordinance. It isn't demanding you do anything. It's giving you guidance so that in the future, the planning commission, the town council, the advisory groups have a means of addressing some of these issues and a way to look at things. It's not ordering anybody to do anything. That's why we didn't make priorities.
It's a thought
It's
process.
up to us to make the priorities.
The thought
not us.
process, the future people
Right.
can look at and glean from that just ideas of what ought to be.
If you read the last one, half of it was never even touched.
Well, that's,
And the half that was touched is probably only 25% of what the last one actually said.
well, that was a different approach there to the whole approach.
And that's what the implementable, I think people are not, or the way I see it as implementable doesn't mean this is what we're going to implement. What it is giving you is a methodology, okay, to say, if these are the things you want to do, we're telling you how you can implement these. So I see it as, oh, this is not what we have to implement, but if we choose, they've given us some methodology. This is the old comprehensive plan I have here, and this is how things were worded differently. And if anybody knows about writing goals and objectives, you know that when you do vague, nebulous goals, they never get done. So the town must amend regulations that are in the best interest for the town of McCandless, which in turn reflect the ideas and interests expressed by town residents. What does that even mean? You must do, where this set gives you more defined things. If you want to do this, this is the first thing you should do, this is the second thing you should do. So it kind of gives you a methodology. And that's it for this comment. It doesn't say, oh, and how you would do that are these things. So this is a different method, I think, of, you know, if you need help doing this, if you want to do this, this is how you do it.
Given the comments and suggestions from a number of the members of the public that there be some prioritization put in, a number of times that comments were made on the 17 or 18 equally or unprioritized items. As the policymakers, as the guidance for this, why is there a hesitancy to be willing to say, yes, we would like to see prioritize the Babcock corridor at $1.9 million first, ahead of the two more costly corridors, and following on with the comment that Mr. Gardner from our planning commission made, he commented that deferred sidewalk projects should be considered, strongly considered. The reason the Babcock corridor is less costly, far less costly, is because there are a number of deferred sidewalk situations there. Bruce, you can speak to that. Why would we not tonight decide to say, yes, we'd like to just make that change and switch Pine Creek out of that language and say that Babcock is first, along with
Well, I bet you the people on Babcock would probably wish that the priority was on Babcock, and the people on Pine Creek
But when we
would
do
probably
the,
wish
when
that
we do
that
the
priority.
budget,
Mr. Mertz, I
when we do
hear
the
you.
budget, we can
I'm just
decide that.
trying to do it.
I mean, we did not prioritize these things because that was left up for town council to do based on the budget, that what you could afford. Now,
Based on development too, I would think that with this development going in at Blazer, that now this thing, all of a sudden this sidewalks appears to be a good idea.
So the developer puts
Yeah.
a sidewalk in.
Yeah, well,
That
the
can
developer puts a sidewalk in to a certain extent, but we put one in out front.
Connect, right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and, but I also think that the sidewalk idea on the flats is a good one, Wexford Flats is good. So, it seems like we're doing both of them, and instead of prioritize, if we had prioritized, we would say, well, wait, we can't do this because we prioritized.
Right.
In that exercise, I don't think that there was, that the cost figures were available when that process was largely underway. You know, in other words, by the time the plan was implemented, they had the numbers in the back, but I think that's important to have an idea of what the financial impact is of these things before we agree ultimately to do a certain thing. I know we're not, or even recommend.
Well, yeah, but.
It's a recommendation. It's not-
Right, but
but
this
we maybe-
recommendation's gonna change anyhow, because they could tell us that this is gonna cost $5
And then
million,
it's gonna be different.
and if we do it in
Yeah.
5 years or 7
Yeah,
years,
yeah.
it's gonna cost
Like
$8.5 million.
And we might
Yeah.
get government money, we might
Yeah.
get,
It could be grants, there's all kinds of
Grants,
things that can
yeah.
intervene.
If I could continue with what was Bill was saying about Babcock, we have already made significant progress. Since we started this plan, we've made significant progress on Babcock already. We have, Vincentian is already gonna put their piece of the sidewalk in up front. I have had the opportunity since then, we got $60,000 from Sunrise to put in a piece of sidewalk. Vincentian's required to put in a piece of sidewalk on the other end.
Excuse me, just address that one if you would. Sunrise, the sidewalk's gonna go near the entrance of Sunrise coming out
No,
of
it's
the
actually on, since they have frontage on Babcock, they gave us $60,000 in lieu of putting in the sidewalk, because we want to know how it's going to tie into the bridge, just like we're doing
Okay.
out here. So we've also, I'm also working with McCandless Corporate Center to get the signal, to see when we're going to put the signal in at Corporate Drive. So we're making great progress along there. If we'd have said, hey, we can't do that because we're doing first, that would all be out the window. This way, we have the ability to put in the sidewalk over here that we're talking about at Blazer Drive and work with other people. We were also working with Hickory Hills for a sidewalk piece over there. So we're working on that. So it's like we continue to work on things and get things done. I've also had a meeting with Mike Tourzai's office.
When you said Blazer a moment ago, did
Yeah.
you mean McCandless Place?
No, Blazer.
Blazer, all the way on to Blazer, okay.
Yeah, because we're getting the sidewalk put in somewhere.
right.
Somehow that sidewalk's getting put in
Right.
anyways. And then we're gonna be working with the Port Authority for another piece of sidewalk. The owner of Hickory Hills agreed to, you know, he'll look at putting a piece of sidewalk in to tie Hickory Hills into it. But, so anyways, we've worked with various owners of property on Babcock. We've worked with McCandless Corporate Center, and we've worked with Mike Tourzai's office to put in, to look at grant money to put that in. They were very positive about that and have consistently been positive about that grant money for that area. And we also I've also had a meeting with Allegheny County to discuss the possibility of them assisting in putting in, because they also have a Babcock Boulevard sidewalk plan in place. So those kind of things, if we would have, you know, if we'd have known all that ahead of time when we wrote this, great, yeah, we'd have maybe said, hey, we've got all, but as a result of this plan, all those things are coming together. Even though we haven't adopted these plans, when we had our meetings to discuss corridors, we went to we had a professionals meeting with transportation people and funding agencies. That's how Allegheny County got involved in this and said, hey, we've got some of those same ideas. So the process has already begun, even though we haven't adopted it. And yeah, it seems as though Babcock's becoming the priority because all the funding is there and things are falling in place much more quickly. But we're continuing to work on the Pine Creek corridor.
And that's regardless of the implemental plan.
Right.
Right.
But there could easily be language inserted that council will continually look at the prioritization of all projects.
Right, I
That's a
think
good-
priorities change every year.
That's what I was gonna
That's a
say, with
good
time,
idea.
technology, things are gonna keep changing, so.
Yeah.
And I think as this road gets paved, or we find out that, you know, then we're gonna be able to say, hey, widen it to its fullest extent and get the 3 extra feet on each side of the road, or,
Well,
you know, Coomer's being paved soon, right?
Coomer is one of the ones that we had a lot of discussion at our steering committee meetings and at our public meetings about bicycles up Coomer Road.
But Coomer is actually scheduled to be repaved soon, within the
It's
next
not-
couple of years.
It's not our road.
I understand
But I
that,
don't
but
know, I
Coomer's,
assume it will be.
I believe Toby said that Coomer was scheduled to be, and we could either ask them to or possibly partially pay for the widening of, in particular, down at the bottom, the last mile or so at the
They
bottom.
wanted to do that. That's in their plans already.
No
Right.
sidewalks are implicated there.
Not sidewalks, more wide.
They want the widening
Walkway.
for multimodal.
But any sidewalk would
It's a
be
tough
priority
deal
in the
there,
future,
though.
if ever.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a tough deal to do that there, because we've got steep drop-offs, we've got storm sewers, but they wanted to do it, and they had engineers, when I met with them, I was meeting with their engineers. But Bill, is there some language we could put in there to say that, because I agree Babcock has become a priority only because it's falling into place. We've had a lot more.
I think that's my point, and I think we're here deliberating this, and we all know that. We all know that's just simply because of where we are in the project. It should be the top priority corridor right now to finish.
Right, but this doesn't have anything to do with being the top priority. Just because the original discussion happened to be, when we were at these meetings, happened to be the Wall Park, where Wall Park is going to cross the Pine Creek. Right, that's how Pine Creek ended up in here, as what reads as a priority, just because we were discussing Wall Park at the time. And we discussed how Wall Park is gonna cross Pine Creek Road, and we'd be able to continue getting into North Park from that trail. And that's how they ended up doing that. I'm positive that's how they ended up doing it, because I remember doing it.
And I appreciate that. It was explained to us in one of the presentations, at least in the discussion of prioritization, that, the goal here was to be flexible enough to be opportunistic, as you said. It concerns me if we're doing strategic planning as a town, though, that we would consider switching our priorities every year. That's problematic for me.
But we do it.
And to Ms. Zachary, to President Zachary there, in the scope, it said funding sources, provide the funding sources, and the only funding sources that I see in this $10 million of corridor work is grants and loans, and it doesn't speak to the actual impact on taxes potentially. It doesn't speak to the impact on homeowners who would be assessed frontage if we intend to do that. I would assume that's how it would be done.
I wouldn't make that assumption.
Yeah, we-
certainly
Yeah, I
would
wouldn't
not.
either. I
Well,
don't
That's
think
up,
anybody.
I mean, that's up to you guys to make that decision.
Well, we
but
should talk about
If I'm
funding
you, I
sources
sure
then.
wouldn't want to do
Well,
that.
I think we should talk about funding sources. We're talking about spending $10 million.
I'm not spending $10
Right.
million.
I have no intention of it.
That's,
Can
I
we
don't think-
eliminate that section of the plan then?
that,
You're not gonna spend the money. What are we?
but maybe
But if we
over
get,
10
if we
years.
get grants, if there's an extra 400,000 in this year's budget, then, nope, I don't know. I've never ever heard a single council person, not past, present, I believe one for the future, who's running, has mentioned potentially raising taxes. So if the last 12 or 13 council members or people running for council that I've heard, I only heard one even possibly bring it up.
Well,
So nobody's talking about raising taxes. Nobody's willing to raise taxes to put it that
I
way.
agree, but we're not talking about funding sources for any of what we're talking about
Well,
passing.
we are. We're talking about grants. We're talking about all previously funded, where we've made people put this money in. We're talking about plans, I would think. I don't know if when they put the Montgomery, that thing right at the entrance of Montgomery.
Well, there's
if
two,
we-
if I may just jump in, Matt, I
Mhm.
didn't mean to cut you off there, but there, on page 5, there's some general guidance, I think it's instructive to what we're discussing right now. It says it will be up to the community, through its elected officials, to decide which action steps to pursue and in what order, although we will suggest, we being Pashik and the writers of this report, suggest priorities for immediate action in this report. And the next one, a short sentence after that, it will be up to the community through their elected officials and after some public discourse, to determine whether to spend public funds on this priority, that priority, or not at all. So I mean, it gives a general guidance with.
You've hit the nail on the head. I guess I'm not prepared to rubber stamp the recommended priorities by the consultant that are in here. And there are a
But
number
they
of
aren't
them.
recommended priorities, they're just the way they
Well, they-
wrote them. We can't to rewrite all of this, we've got a budget coming
I'm
up.
not asking to rewrite.
I think I think you can insert some cautionary language, Steve. I
Well,
wouldn't
we
suggest
can-
rewriting the whole
I
thing.
thought you read some cautionary language.
Right,
What I just
right
read,
there.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thrilled by the changes that Councilman Wiskoskis made to protect those people on Memorial Drive. That would not have happened.
We
had
had
not
to,
taken
through his
the time.
personal effort. he had
Except
spent
for,
personal
except for
effort.
Memorial Drive would not have happened with this council, and I doubt with the next council, and I know not with the previous council.
I agree
So,
with you,
the
sir.
Memorial Drive, the protection of the people in Memorial Drive, okay, we've written things to protect them against something that was never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. That's never going to happen. It never was. It was all a bunch of spooky, let me scare you and get you in here. It wasn't ever going to happen.
Steve, I couldn't
So-
agree more, and that's why, and I know you hear me when I say, let's write and say what we mean, not
Right,
just
but
accept
I mean, why can't we
somebody
write?
else's language.
Right, but oh my God, we're talking about so much language in here that could be changed.
I'll bet
that-
that if we ask Mr. Betty to flag the PASHIC recommendations in here, not the steering committee recommendations, the PASHIC ones, for us to simply deliberate and agree or disagree to keep them, we could get through this in one meeting. Mr. Betty, can you?
We haven't even been able to
identify those things?
get through a sidewalk across the front of the building in one meeting.
But
It's been like
but the
14
whole-
meetings.
The whole reason we paid them all this money was to make these recommendations.
No.
We don't have
Can
to
we,
accept, we don't have
can
to
we
do
make
them.
some sort of a cover letter
That's what I was gonna say, just something.
that
that's
instead, that just specifically says, we don't have to do any of this? It's the recommendation and this is what we're looking at? I mean, it seems to me that, right,
I think we gotta go back to the understanding again of what a comprehensive plan is. It's not an ordinance, it's not a requirement, it gives us guidance. And like Bill just read,
right.
it's up to you, and I've said this several times, it's up to you through the various groups that we have assisting you, whether it's gonna be the Activities Advisory Committee, the EAC, or whomever, Planning Commission, it's up to you to make those decisions. That's what this was all about. And it goes through bunches. I understand what you're saying, Bill, and there is a way to do all that stuff. It's a whole different type of plan, a whole different planning process. And it's not something that our previous council wanted to even consider doing, and we've never considered doing it. But I think we can change some wording here and make it even more clear, emphasizing
Those
what
two
Bill just
paragraphs I
read.
read, I think you could just, as you read through the whole document in front of us, keep those in the back of your mind, and if something needs to be changed as you proceed, just change it. I mean,
That's
none of
what
this
we've
is,
been saying.
none of these things are mandatory orders that
Right.
things must be done.
Right.
The process provides a skeleton upon which you can build action in the future, after it's authorized by proper authorities, namely council.
I just feel this is my first time I've ever gone through this type of a process, so please be patient with me. I just feel that as part of the process, this council was charged with reviewing, deliberating, and ultimately passing the document. I just do not feel comfortable passing a consultant's recommendations without deliberation and I don't want to feel like a rubber stamp.
We ought to have a meaningful review and endorsement of what's in this document.
So
That's
you've
what
had
I'm
it for 2
asking
months.
for.
Right, we've had it
And you've had it
for-
for 2 months, and that's why I wanted the Blazer Drive thing to be rewritten, and Greg submitted his. So those things should have been submitted 2 months ago. if
Bill
you
made
had
some
changes
requests.
that you
I'm sorry
wanted.
that I made requests at the prior meeting that haven't been addressed, and stormwater being, I think, the most significant, but the prioritization and more detail in the budget funding, and also the language on the community activities group. I'm concerned about those, I still am. I don't think they necessarily came out of the steering committee, I think they came out of the consultant, and that's my concern here this evening. And this, honestly, this is the first time, as a body, we've had a chance to deliberate this. We've taken comment, we've had a public hearing, but we haven't deliberated as a group. This is the first time, as a body, as a
I
decision-making
think this is
body,
a healthy part of the process.
we've had a chance to talk about this. And I'm just sharing my feelings with this body. It's the pleasure of the council. I don't mean to be disrespectful or excited. I apologize if I have been. Thank you.
I think a lot of it's just looking at things differently. You know, I have from the beginning and continue to look at this as this is just a mitt full of recommendations of what we should be looking at, and where we go with it is up to the council at the time. I think every 2 years, no matter what, priorities change, because you're always going to get 1 or 2 new council members in, or someone's going to retire, or something's going to happen. So every 2 years, no matter what, something changes. I think every single place you look, the people who live on Pine Creek are going to want something different than the people who live on Babcock. I think the town as a whole is going to do, here's a section of Pine Creek that you can now walk on. I know the town didn't necessarily do it. We put some money into it, but just for example, that bridge down there was impossible to walk on safely. And now you can actually do it if you need to. And that's part of Pine Creek. And Passavant and Vincentian is going to do other things that, you know, are going to help that part of Babcock. And while we may not end up with the whole strip from the Cannon to Corporate Drive done next year for $5 million, and we might end up with, you know, 1/10 of Babcock and 1/30 of Pine Creek done or whatever, I think that's going to happen as a natural thing. I think the biggest thing is this has always been meant as a recommendation for us to work off of and decide, and whether or not it says do Babcock first or Blazer Drive first or anything, it doesn't matter, because every year we make a new budget, which is where part of this comes from. None of us can say, oh, well, we're going to just take $10 million out of this year's budget to put sidewalks in. We're going to say we're going to take $800,000 out of the next year's budget, or $200,000 out of the next year's budget, and we're going to put that $200,000 in here, and then next year we're going to put it in there.
Okay, well, let me ask council then, and maybe our manager, what's our expectation once this is approved, once this is approved by council, what's the expectation for next steps and how this implementable plan goes forward? Since it's, apparently, we don't have to do anything in it, and there's not necessarily an appetite to fund anything beyond grants and loans, not loans, that would be debt, grants and,
Right.
yeah, I guess grants.
To me,
Probably what's
once
gonna
this
be
is
about
passed, the next step
Probably
is the
review.
budget. And once we get through our budget and we say, okay, going through our budget, we have $130,000 that we can go and do something
Stormwater
with.
facilities, right?
Well, if that's where we find it, where we decide to put them,
That's our
then that's
priority.
the
That's right.
priority, then that's where we put it.
I think it becomes a discourse between staff and the council in terms of, the comprehensive plan becomes a strategy to implement certain things if the council wishes. That becomes part of the discourse. Is there something that the council would like to address from the comprehensive plan as part of this upcoming budget process, or throughout this budget process? Or we're looking at, whether it's Babcock, whether it's one of the other programs that may have been noted. Does council want to fund this? We have this much money. Do you want to look at Pine Creek, or do you want to do some additional stormwater work? Do you want to look at Babcock, or do you want to consider some expansion of the building for activities?
So
Do-
is, excuse me, I'm
It,
sorry.
it'll just become an ongoing discourse, and that's how I envision it. It becomes an opportunity for myself, for staff, to have those discussions with council, and what do you want to do? It becomes an opportunity for staff to have discussions with developers who may be developing new pieces of property in the corridor that is noted in here. It may be a redevelopment of corridor where we say, hey, this was considered, for some specific action as part of your plan. One of the conditions that we're gonna put on it is that you incorporate sidewalks, streetscaping, to improve the appearance. We're going to enhance a front buffer area to create
So,
that.
the reason I asked the question is, again, there are a number of directives in there, largely, I believe, written by the consultant, that indicate staff shall do this, staff shall do that. And when we hand you a comprehensive plan, I just want to note the understanding is that won't mean anything, that the staff will need to collaborate with this council.
Right, but if
That
we decide to
direction
do this, but this
before
is saying that.
I could put
anything in there goes forward.
I could put $90,000 in the manager's recommendation in the budget for a recreation director. And if council chooses to not fund that in the budget, council's
Which
will
we've done in the past.
council's
with other
will
things.
has been voiced.
Just like the sprayer that Mark wanted last year, that we told him hold off until next year, and we may be telling him to put off again.
When I think
Depending
about
on this.
voting for this
I hope so.
comprehensive
The
plan,
sprayer?
what my mind is thinking is that I am voting for the recommendations in this plan. Not necessarily that I want to implement them, but that I am accepting these recommendations. I think there are many good recommendations in here, but it does not mean for 1 second that I'm going to implement these. I can pick and choose whichever I want, but what I'm accepting.
Or do something different.
Or do something completely different, because
Right.
we may have a better idea in 4 years, 5 years, 2 years, but.
Or if something big and bad happens,
Right.
like
Another
the
flood.
sidewalk that I wanted so bad for the Cumberland Road that we decided not to make North Allegheny put in. What if 4 kids get hit there someday? That's gonna become a priority real quick. Because we intentionally decided to let North Allegheny get away with that. So things can change in a heartbeat.
Wait a second, that was because of the, wasn't it because of the?
Topography.
No,
On
it
the
was
other side,
also
we could have put it on the opposite side for the same price, at a reasonable price.
The
And those
exposure?
kids in the track team run that all the time, I've seen them. And the only reason I say this is because I used to run it, and I know
Boy,
how
is there a lot of
dangerous it
stuff
was.
happening. On the one side, there is
The pipeline.
the
isn't it?
pipeline, you
Yeah.
can't build on that,
Right.
Right.
period.
We could have
And
put
on
the
the
same,
other side
It's steep.
is steep. They could put it there, but it was extremely expensive.
Yeah.
Extremely expensive.
but they could have put it on the other side of Cumberland.
No,
No, you
No.
got the- you got the
no, there's a
Pipeline.
pipeline.
That's up on the hill.
No, it is not, no, it is not. We
Pipeline
walked
is
it,
that
Crosses
over.
it.
we walked it, and it's all on the other side, trust me.
What's the name of that pipeline?
It's
What's the name of the pipeline? Do you know?
oil and gas pipeline.
No,
That's
no.
it.
Buckeye
Buckeye.
Pipe.
And maybe on the spot, I almost forgot.
Yeah.
And
They
you
are
can,
immovable.
you can drive down there, and there are yellow things sticking right up, all the whole way down there.
It crosses over at the access to Lowe's.
Lowe's, yeah.
Yeah, so it's there, because we walked it.
So what we ended up doing though is we're going to put in the crosswalk with the lighted crosswalk.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother story.
It's a whole nother story.
And
So,
they'll still take the trail, 100-yard trail behind the school.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we talked about behind the school, remember?
Yeah, we talked about behind the
Okay,
school,
okay,
where anybody's
okay,
gonna be
stay
able to
focused,
walk past the
stay
school
focused,
children.
stay focused.
Of course,
All
I
right.
definitely don't like unknown adults
Okay.
walking behind an elementary.
Okay.
I would like to
Even
make
though schools
one
are-
last plea then for this council to consider at least reviewing, having our planning and zoning guy identify the PASHIC recommendations and at least acknowledge which ones are consultants versus which ones are our steering committee, which are the actual citizen input and what we should really be paying attention to in this.
How would you
That's a
tease that
ton of-
out? How would
right.
you tease that out? I don't know.
That's a ton of work.
Because some of them were things that kind of came together.
Yeah, a lot of it did,
How much are we gonna have to raise taxes to get all this work done?
hey, I do all my work for one low price.
Very low price.
How much are you
No
not
tax
gonna get,
increase.
how much of the other work are you not gonna get done to get this
He's
done?
down to a
See,
dollar an
because
hour.
it was like the working together that the ideas were all kind of milled around,
Yeah,
and then we came to conclusions.
I like the idea better of tempering things, rather than mandating or shells or wills. Like we had the old comprehensive plan, we shall do this. Let me go back, if it's okay with council.
Will and may and.
Yeah, if I get rid of some of the,
Use the
Like-
word may, it's soft.
and I thought I'm not sure, I gotta go back and make sure I got the right pages for those. That, she sent me, I put in the pages she sent me, but when I compared 127 to 127, looked like the same page to me. So that was her direction, she took the direction to do that on her own, I didn't even have to tell her to do that. That came from one of our meetings that we had. The steering committee wasn't happy with that recommendation at all.
So, if you go through and say again that May, so you're gonna put you're just gonna put May in there everywhere, is that what we
Well, it
want?
won't be May, there'll be something, I'll do something. I think the way that we ended up doing the community center space, I think that came out very well. Because it showed that it wasn't a
Yes.
mandate.
I agree.
So, the
Permissive
whole
rather than
plan,
mandatory.
or just a specific section of the plan? The whole plan?
These are the areas of the plan that are the recommendations that are being made, the to-do lists. There's 5 to-do lists in there.
So the whole,
5 sections, not the
In
whole
each
plan,
section-
we're not
in each
rewriting the
section,
plan,
the
we're talking about.
I'm just trying to figure out what your
No, I appreciate-
expectations
no,
are.
I appreciate
I
that,
wanna be
thank you
clear.
for clarity, yes.
Okay.
You're not
Are
speaking,
you
Bill,
getting
of the appendices, for example.
Sort of.
The policies are simply
Right.
data.
So it's
We're-
it's scaled back to the.
So,
We're only gonna go through what's in this agenda, today's agenda. And we're going to change things like will to may, or shall, or
We'll come
could,
up with
or.
something. Bill, if you and I could work together on at least one example, show me, let's do that, and then I can take it from there.
and what do we expect? Give me
Uh,
some time.
I don't know, what's your schedule?
I'm available this week to work with you.
What are you doing later tonight? Sydney's back there, be careful.
Be careful.
We'll get together sometime this week if you can get a
I
hold of me.
wanna
Yes, sir.
know, I wanna know when council's gonna get to see it.
We'll have it, I hope, for Monday night.
Beautiful, that would be perfect. Can you send
And then
it
we-
around before Monday night so we
I'll
can look at it
do
before
my
Monday?
best, because
Okay.
we got a lot of developers agreements to get done and some other things that
Okay.
we're working on.
Okay, all right,
Developers
so
agreements and PennDOT
watch your,
agreements.
watch your email.
I may not be able
Thank
to,
you,
my
counsel.
computer seems to
Thank
have
you.
just gone.
Thank you, everybody. Should I stick around for the dogs?
You better run fast.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah, good idea.
okay.
Yeah, you better do that.
Just exceed it.
Greg, three.
Notification of the resignation of Chuck Potter, a member of McCandless Uniform. Parker. A member of McCandless Uniform Construction Code, International Fire Code, and Property Maintenance Code Appeals Board. So he's decided to resign.
He's moving away.
Oh, is he?
So, the question that I have for council is, all of our appointments tend to hit at the end of the year when we have less meetings and we have the budget to deal with. So what I'm proposing is that, for example, we could do construction code. We could, because we have his position to replace, and we could advertise for the 30 days that we advertise, and then we could go ahead and interview for anyone else's term who's coming up.
I mean, start it now.
Start now. So that way we could maybe not have, and then this way we can kind of group them together, because when I'm interviewing one from planning, one from, zoning, one from personnel, it's hard to keep everybody straight, so we can kind of do them all together. So what do you guys think about that? What do you think about advertising? And of course, they would start their term when they normally would, the following year. The other nice thing about this is it gives them time to attend some of the meetings, like through the day before they're actually on the board.
And what makes it easier, as we did tonight, just interviewing two
That's
people
what-
instead of a whole
Exactly.
slew.
Right. So are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
My only concern is not to get too far in advance. I wouldn't want to be interviewing 6 months ahead of a placement. I think 3 months might be a reasonable lead time to give us, a whole, that's a lot of time.
Because it's
to
a month
squeeze them
interview.
in.
I mean, it's a month post.
Yeah.
So if we start posting now, that'd be September, right? And then we
October,
gotta get all
November,
those
December
in.
is work
October.
for
So
me.
that's
Yeah.
kind of what it's gonna be.
That's, I
So,
just don't want to get ridiculous with the lead time.
Yeah.
so maybe we can post his position and then however many other people are coming up in 19. And then we can look at setting a schedule for getting the rest of those posted. Okay.
Okay, are we ready for, or is there any public comment on any of the two items we discussed?
Yep, looks like it.
Okay.
Oh,
sure.
yes.
You have to come up to the mic.
Come up to Mike and
Comment on which one?
Come on, any of it, she can tell us.
For the
Tell
zoning,
us,
yes.
The
My name is
implement-
Stephanie King. I live at 10093 Oak Ridge Drive. And Mr. Kirk, I want to thank you very much for wanting clarification about this implementable comprehensive plan. I mean, it's called an implementable comprehensive plan. And to me, as a resident, I have been worried a lot about it being implemented. I mean, that's what implementable usually implies. So I really do appreciate you wanting clarification, wanting things prioritized, all of that. I emailed you today expressing some of my concern. I know it's very late, and I apologize for that, and I don't expect you to have read it, but about the Pine Creek corridor and the Harmony corridor. And I live on Oak Ridge Drive, and a lot of it is going to happen right there at the entrance of Oak Ridge Drive, if in fact it's implemented. And I thought it was going to be implemented. I mean, that's what I thought about all of this, that it's going to be implemented, and our tax is, we're going to be raised to pay for all of this. So I don't think of any of this as recommendations. I think of it as being implemented. So the wording you all decided to put, the cautionary wording, would be very much appreciated. So I did express my concerns just about the safety in that area, the traffic of people bicycling, walking, this parking area that you all want down there. I don't see a need of it where there's parking down at the baseball field nearby. It all sounds great, biking, walking. Pine Creek's a busy road. And if in fact it takes off and people are really using it a lot more, it could be very congested in that area, and our subdivision is fairly quiet, and it's meant to be quiet and peaceful and safe. In this parking area, for all you know, you're going to have water fountains at some point and a rest area at some point, and that's not what I would hope is intended for that area. So that's all. I just wanted to express my concerns about that, and thank you very, very much about wanting clarification and prioritizing this. Thank you.
Alicia Del Lago, 8828 Memorial Drive. I just want to thank the council and the zoning committee in my name and in the name of all the residents that would have been affected for the peace of mind that we are going to get, knowing that that is out totally from the comprehensive plan. And I also want to thank, because Memorial Park in front of my house looks beautiful now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, the zoning committee meeting is hereby adjourned.
Okay, I call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting. First up, Chief's report.
Yes, I've been expanding my space during this meeting.
Any chance
Good
of taking
evening.
a quick break here?
Pause for pause that refreshes.
12 seconds. Go.
I'm gonna take a quick break before you say something important.
5-minute recess.
That'd be fine.
Meeting because he's a jerk. Hey, do you think that maybe we should go on those cracks? Down here on the sidewalk?
I don't know. You could think about throwing them in.
So did you get a chance to look at the fines?
Is that Bill in? Oh, hello.
I called him, right?
Is that Bill in here?
What did you do?
I haven't heard back, I just called today to see what he says.
Yeah.
Downstairs.
Here's the what the suffix able means. Capable of.
Yeah.
Tending
that
to,
too.
given
Oh, no,
to.
I'm sorry.
That's what
Doesn't
everybody
mean
keeps thinking.
ED.
Yes, this is not implementing,
I
this is
know.
not implemented, it's implementable.
Yeah.
I don't know how, that can't possibly be that part of a concept to grasp.
Work with the magistrate a little bit too. We've been, over the years, had a little bit to always get into really assess bigger fines.
Now I'm gonna have to drink all that, so we don't waste it.
We gotta go. We acquired the property that parking was 30 years ago. Very reason.
Right.
I like the idea of it.
Yep.
Just so you know, I gave Marie a bunch of my folders to reuse and that
Yeah.
thumb drive from the chief. So if she's wondering what it is, that's just, I forgot to bring it in. Oh, so since I don't get each next week, all this stuff from comprehensive plan, I guess I'll just have to review when I come home. Yeah.
Right, right.
Huh?
Or, that's the word I want, but that you come out and check on this. I mean, it's the same with everyone, the fact that they're attacking. Isn't there someone like you? We don't have someone that we call someone.
See if that solved my problem.
I'm not familiar with that person.
The dog warden that we have here, we have someone, but.
Why not, it's not called warden, what's the word I'm looking for?
No, I thought he was.
Is he warden?
Yeah,
He's a dog
Yeah,
warden?
dog
he
warden.
is, he's up in,
You looking for like the manager of the dog pound?
Yeah, well, no,
That'd be
he's,
the dog warden.
he's the one who
He takes care of
comes, like if they find a stray dog down here, he comes and gets a dog.
What I'm saying, like
Hey,
this woman
Gavin.
that has.
I think Art wanted to kiss you.
You
I didn't
what
know how to
wrote?
stop it.
You know what I
I
wrote
didn't
on
know
this
what to do.
resume? Talking.
I don't think anyone.
You know what I wrote? Art wants
It
to
was
kiss
just off the
Gavin.
rails. And I
You
was
said,
just,
what?
Art wants to kiss Gavin. I did.
You're awful.
Marie, that's,
No.
Marie.
What's your job?
oh yeah, a job, right?
He wants his job, he didn't want to kiss his wife. He wants his job.
That's true. It may have been an interview for you.
That was
There you
hilarious. Oh, you're way too smart to work.
I know.
Tucker. I'm just like going,
boss will
well,
love that.
he used to work for Tucker. He doesn't now.
There's dog to watch. They're not watching YouTube at 8:45 at night or whatever the heck that was.
What's on YouTube
No,
stays
it's not
forever.
that exciting.
That was the clip.
It was one of your best
Meanwhile,
lines,
there'll
I
be
have to say.
250,000 hits tomorrow.
Right.
And what we need to do is we need to shorten it up and just make a little clip of that one, and then just spread it out as a,
Everybody
I'd
else
rather we
does
didn't
it.
do that. Let's never talk about this.
yeah, one of those, make it go viral.
That's right.
What do they call those? They're not memes.
We're gonna
Those
wait.
little gifs. A GIF.
We're gonna save that for when it's contract renegotiation.
Yeah.
That's when that's coming out.
Do I hit send?
Hopefully
or
no
don't I hit
hopefully no
send?
one's tech savvy enough to do all the things that Steve's talking about.
That's all right. Half the people over there
All right.
probably aren't tech
All right.
savvy
Did you
enough
hear
to
what I
open up
wrote
the.
down in his
All right,
resume?
Chief.
anyhow.
Sorry. We had just emergencies.
All right. Are we back on play?
Yeah. All right. Okay, public safety.
Good evening. I'm going to just do some brief notes from the monthly report. The report's posted on the website if there's any questions. I want to talk about a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank Council for moving forward in the hiring process. We have one officer scheduled to be sworn in and looking at another one, and that's very important just to supplement the SROs going back to the school for the patrol division. I'm appreciative of the efforts on that. Beatty Technical Institute, I helped them. They are going to put an SRO in the school and to help with the interview process, and we're going to present candidates to the board. Beatty Technical Institute is a multi-school board technical school here in the town of McCandless. And I really appreciate what they're doing because I'm a tremendous advocate of a professional presence of security in each and every one of the schools. And we had a meeting about our SROs that President Zachary attended, Councilman Schwager and Mertz, and I talked about that. And I think it's one of the best investments we can do for our children. So I'm glad to see that they're moving forward with that. We had several trainings during the month of the month of July. And I want to talk about an investigation we did. It took a long time, but if you remember, there was a robbery and assault that occurred on April 4th, 2019. I think it's important that the public knows that we also made an arrest here just recently. The result of the investigation, there were 2 additional conspirators who were charged and arrested for conspiracy to commit robbery. Why that's important is McCandless Crossing and the management there takes great pride in the fact of keeping that particular area safe. And this wasn't a random act. This wasn't an act that was targeted. This was a meticulously planned out incident to target a certain person. So I think the public needs to know that to be able to find solace in the fact that this wasn't a random attack. And McCandless Crossing is a safe area to patronize. We've been working very diligently, officers in the office of the Pennsylvania Attorney Drug Task Force. We've been doing some really good things with investigations, and we executed a search warrant recently, which is very helpful. We try to be very proactive in the enforcement and education when it comes to any type of illegal narcotics, and I think we're doing a very good job with that, and we continue to be vigilant as we need to be. Respectfully, that's my report.
Thank you. Okay, next, notification of swearing in of Sean Davis as a police officer for the town of McCandless is scheduled to take place at council regular business meeting on August 26, 2019. Next, discussion of a dog nuisance ordinance.
So in your packets was an ordinance that we prepared at the direction of council, increasing the penalties for violations of keepers of nuisance animals. And specifically, the way we set it up is to make it an escalating fine rather than the minimal fine I think it is right now, which is $25. Instead, it would start at $50, go up to $100, then $200, $300, $400, and $500 after that. The $500 is the from the town charter, the maximum fine for a ordinance violation. So again, the idea is we're trying to deter the conduct. This does not modify, sort of the way the nuisance itself is defined, as discussed with council. We thought that the best way to try to attack this problem is to really kind of address the symptoms of it, the actual bad behavior at this point, rather than try to place a unilateral number on the how many animals we can keep. We've been talking to the chief about it, and I know he's talked to his officers, and they're going to aggressively enforce this. I don't believe that, I spoke to the chief about it today, he's here, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there's been any recent complaints that would trigger any of the violations of 707 and 108, but I know his officers, and he could be very diligent based on obviously the amount of issues that have been raised by the public of this particular conduct by these primarily dogs. I'm looking now at a markup that Mr. Wolkoskis has handed me, and he has he's suggesting that we slide in a semicolon in there to make things a little more clear. I agree with his revision, so we'll modify that to make it clear that items 1, 2, and 3 are collectively identifying or defining what a nuisance animal is, rather than kind of it's sort of blended together in the last paragraph there. So
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Wolkoskis, for
No problem. I also, under A1, there's a typo in the second line under which are amendments to the health. Do you see that
I
type of?
do see, yeah,
Yeah.
I think you have some very helpful cleanup items here, and I'll incorporate all of this.
Now, is there any way to add or include a time limit on, like if somebody's, I don't know, dog poops in the neighbor's yard and gets a $50 fine, and then 7 years later, a different dog that they own happens to poop in the same neighbor's yard, are they gonna get the $100 fine? Or is it, is this per year, or is this after a year of nothing happening, it comes back? Cause, it doesn't necessarily seem fair that if somebody makes a mistake this year, or whatever, their pet makes a mistake, and then, because there are neighbors that complain about every single animal too. And they're like, well, his dog barked at 6 a.m. And the person's like, okay, I'm gonna try to do everything I can to not keep the dog barking at 6 a.m. And then a year later, if the dog barks once a year at 6 a.m, that's
Right.
kind of ridiculous that they're gonna get a $100 fine the second time.
And I understand that, and keep in mind, this would be through a citation process, so this actually goes through the magistrate for these fines. But to your point, we recently had a false alarms ordinance that reset every year.
Right.
If that's council's wish.
I would say we have
can
to,
certainly set
because
that up.
again, it's not fair that if one person has a grouchy neighbor and their dog barks once a year, that they end up with a $500 fine every year just because of that dog.
5 years.
Well, it could be every year. If the dog barks once a year after 5 years of barking,
That's what
they'd
I
end
said,
up with a
after-
500.
after
Well,
5
right,
years.
but then every year afterwards, they'd end up with a $500 fine.
I bet they could make the dog quit barking.
Once a year? I don't know, maybe you
think
should
that's
make
our
the,
goal.
maybe there
Our goal
should be
is
a
no
point.
barking dogs.
How about
Well,
getting
you
rid of the
can't-
dogs?
Maybe, what about no complaining neighbors?
I think if your dogs don't bark, neighbors don't complain about barking dogs. Is not how that works?
And
Yep.
I think
I think
there's,
it is.
That's how it works.
I
Thanks,
think that
It
Chris.
is definitely how it
if
works.
it boils down to every time somebody agitates somebody
You
else,
must have a barking dog.
I actually don't have a barking dog, but I have a neighbor with 2 barking dogs.
But I think the answer to your concern, you have to rely upon the judgment of the magistrate.
That's what I was gonna
ultimately.
say.
There you
Some-
go.
Well, but you don't know who the
Well, I mean-
magistrate's gonna be next
It
week.
doesn't matter who it is,
You
I
don't
can
know,
take
no matter who it is.
consideration and think about those things.
I don't think, the current magistrate, I can't imagine him.
No, but the
someone
past one was a
enforcing any-
jag-off about
Well,
everything.
that's a long time ago.
I understand, but he was horrible.
I think by including that, aren't you kind of
Okay.
leaving out?
Friedman flipped out no
Okay,
matter
all right,
what you
wait,
did.
We have only one conversation at a time.
I thought
Mr.
you were-
Woskowskis?
Yeah, I thought
Back in your seat,
I thought
please.
yours was a certain, I thought yours was a peculiar
We actually go on this
conversation.
So are we talking about adding the resets every year, just like the fire alarm?
No,
That's ridiculous.
that's,
Well, I won't be voting for this one at all.
okay.
Okay.
I'm looking around the table. for
Absolutely
other head nods.
ridiculous.
No reset?
No reset, no reset.
No reset.
No reset.
Just leave it like it
These are
is.
talking about a bunch of people who don't care about their neighbors at all. They just want to make
I
sure they
love
get.
my neighbors. What are you talking
What
about?
if that dog barks?
I want their dogs quiet.
That's not natural for a dog to always be quiet.
I never
What if that
fuss
dog
at it. I
barks
never
at a
fuss
burglar
about
in the
dog barking,
backyard?
but I want for other people.
There you go.
So I will make Mr. Wolkowski's cleanups, leave everything else the same, and have it ready.
What were
for-
his cleanups? I heard some of them.
Just
It's- they're-
semicolon.
they're
Semicolon
pretty-
and-
You mentioned in paragraph A something. I couldn't see it A something.
70108A.
Wait, 701.
Here it is.
On the
To
front.
the top.
No.
You need the actual ordinance, the actual.
Oh, okay, now you're confusing me with the facts.
Yeah, this is not something that he's
All right.
making me correct the 1961
Yeah, okay.
ordinance that someone else did.
He's not correct what was in
But it's
the.
actually, these are good changes.
No.
I'm kidding, they are good changes.
We need
Yeah.
to move on people in the audience.
Don't worry,
Go ahead,
I'll
think
get
we
you.
got it.
Are you guys, so
Wait,
we're
was the
okay with
interest
this
in our dog
$50 fee?
nuisance ordinance?
Everything else is
Are
fine?
we okay with
Next.
what?
Okay.
That's
Okay,
gonna make
move on.
open discussion.
Forget it. Number
Yes, it
5,
is.
notification.
Absolutely. 6 people want to attack every homeowner.
I
dog
can see,
owner.
I can see either way, but and I'm, okay.
Yeah.
I
Notification
never
that-
call, I never call.
I'm-
But I
I'm-
want it for other people.
Right.
Okay. Notification that an appointment to fill a vacancy for the Town of McCandless Personnel Board is scheduled at Council's regular business meeting of August 26, 2019. Okay, public comment? No comment? Okay.
You wanna make
You
a
know what?
comment now? You wanna make a comment now?
Okay.
Yeah, I thought you had a comment.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, okay.
Okay, she does, but not on this.
This concludes.
Not on this.
Okay.
Oh, all
This
right.
concludes
Call
the
to order.
public safety committee.
Call to order Finance and Personnel Committee. Review checklist number 8, dated July 4th, 2019 through August 7th, 2019, totaling $768,398.69 is submitted to each member of council and posted on the bulletin board and town website. Comments or questions about any of that, any of the list of bills? Okay. Review the monthly financial statement and dashboard report.
Good evening, council. You have in front of you the financial dashboard and memo for July. It pretty consistent with prior months. Again, we're averaging about $1 million a month in expenditures. We're about 43% of budgeted revenue expectations. Revenue isn't as cyclable as expenses, so that's to be expected. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Most of departments are at budget or below for this time of year. The ones that aren't, it tends to be because of one-time expenditures, for instance, insurance, et cetera, that needs to be paid out of cycle. Again, I'm available for any questions you all might have on the dashboard, on the financial reports, or the check listing, and any other items that are on tonight's agenda for finance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Loving the dashboard.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's very helpful for non-accountants. Presentation of reports by Manning and Napier and ANCO Consulting on the second quarter investment performance of the town's uniformed and non-uniformed benefit pension plans. Okay. All right, so, hi, you're gonna give us a little
Very quick.
summary on how things are, how we're doing,
Good.
how you're doing.
I'll spare you how I'm doing. In our reports, after tab 3, I'll go straight to the bottom line. As of the end of June, this report date, the pension plan assets that we managed were up to $16.3 million. That's on page 21 of 42, as I said, after tab 3. If you turn the page, that's been translated into performance returns. Since we met earlier this year and talked about last year and previously, I'll just go to the year-to-date and the quarter on page 23. The year-to-date return was 12.29%. The quarter return was 3.62%. Both of those returns are right around the benchmark returns, and obviously very strong positive returns. Your actual return assumption is 7 or 7.5%. So well ahead of that for year-to-date. Obviously making up a little bit for last year, but you can see on page 22, I continue to keep the calendar year 2018 number in there. While it was a difficult year, the pension plan assets only lost just under 2%, as compared to a 2% to 4% loss for the two different benchmarks that we have. So since June 30th, the portfolio is up through July. It had in this report the return was 12.29%. At the end of July, the return was 13.12%, so it was up almost a little bit under 1% for the month of July. And in August, despite the uptick in volatility, the assets today, or as of the close of business on Friday, not including today's down day, but the assets as of Friday were $16,353,000. So, and that doesn't, there were some benefit payments made in between this June 30th amount and this, that Friday dollar value. So the S&P 500 so far this month in September through August 9th was down 1.42%. Your account is up.
So we're having a very good month in August as the volatility has crept back in. Frankly, as I talked earlier, we did very well in the fourth quarter of last year when the market was down. We're positioned right now in a modestly cautious position, preparing for what we see as getting closer and closer to the end of the economic cycle and the market cycle. We don't know when that's going to happen. It could last another year or two before it pulls back significantly. But we're in a position now where we're prepared for that and looking for that. So our performance is going to tend to do better relative to our benchmarks and our peers when the market's down. So it did well in the fourth quarter of last year. It's done well so far this August as the volatility has crept up a little bit more. And frankly, we're very pleased that the performance is benchmarked like year to date in such a strong year when we've been relatively conservatively positioned. Being underweight equity helped in the fourth quarter. It's generally hurt this year, but the stocks that we own have done so well that it's made up for the fact that we were a little bit underweight equity. So given our continued cautious, we're about 48% equity, 52% stocks and bonds. We could be a lot higher than that. We could be a lot lower than that. So that's sort of a little bit below neutral. But the kinds of stocks we own in the portfolio as well are relatively high quality, companies without a lot of leverage, companies without a lot of exposure to the cyclical parts of the economy, and they're generally holding up better when the market gets a little nervous and goes down a bit. So that's been helping. Plus, the interest rates have come down quite a bit. I think, I know Justin mentioned a statistic to me. I'm going to steal it from him. The 10-year Treasury at the beginning of the year was yielding 2.93%. Today it's yielding 1.6%? 1.64%. That's a dramatic decrease in interest rates. That helps the bonds that we own in the portfolio. They go up in value when interest rates come down. Unfortunately, when your actuary calculates your liabilities, when interest rates fall, the liabilities go up. So, while the assets have done quite well, the funding percentage may not have improved a whole lot because interest rates have fallen. It's really hard to predict where that's going to go from here. The fact that interest rates are so low is not a particularly positive sign. It means that investors in the bond market are not very excited about prospects for growth in the United States. Otherwise, they'd be the yields would be higher. We're not overly concerned. We think the economy's in decent shape. We don't see a lot of red flags that would cause it to cause a recession to have to be forced by the Federal Reserve by continuing to raise interest rates. Clearly, they've come out with very strong signals that they're going to be supportive of the economy, and that's a big reason why the economy recovered in the first half of the year from last year. But the rest of the world, everyone in the countries around the world are kind of mired in this slow growth environment without a lot of positive, optimism in the market. So it's hard to say where things are going to go from here, but we're a little bit more cautious that at some point in this cycle, stocks are going to have a big fall like they did in the fourth quarter, and maybe even worse than that. And we're kind of positioning for that. Not, if the market continues to grow, your portfolio will grow and will have positive numbers that will meet your actual returns. But if it comes back significantly, we should add a lot of value and be in a position where we can then step in and buy more and increase the risk of the portfolio to capture the recovery when it happens.
Dave, do the tariffs that have gotten so much news, China and the U.S. tariffs, do those impact us in any significant way, or what do you want to say something about that?
It does. It seems to be a part of the malaise in the economy, the part of the reason that growth was very strong last year, driven mainly by the tax cuts of late 2017. But those tax cuts are now winding off, and corporate earnings are dropping, growth is dropping. It's gone from 3 to 4% down to 2 to 2.5%. Part of that reason seems to be the increased uncertainty around the discussions with Chinese tariffs. Companies that are otherwise doing well in this great economy, this strong economy where consumers everybody's got jobs and consumers are spending relatively freely. Companies are afraid to build that new plant to increase their capacity because they're not sure if building the plant in the US or elsewhere is going to be better until they find out where these tariffs are going to end up permanently or semi-permanently. So everybody's kind of been holding back on business investment in places, and that's clearly having an effect on the US economy. It's also having an effect on the Chinese economy, so it's kind of a game of chicken. Which government is going to
China has
bow
more long-term
first?
control.
Pardon?
China has more long-term control of their economy.
They do, but
They
they
can do
also
whatever they want.
they also have a very large population that's
Yeah, I understand.
that needs
Well,
to be happy.
You answered my question.
Anything else?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I will try to be brief as well, and I will try to put some of Dave's comments specifically around asset allocation in context relative to other pension plans your size. You know, he mentioned the more sort of cautious or conservative outlook, given some of the economic data points that have been coming in recently. So that 48% equity allocation is conservative relative to peers. Most plans of your size would still be about 60 to 65% in equity. So as equity markets have done very well over the last 3 years, this conservative allocation has been a headwind. But we have seen, Dave mentioned the fourth quarter last year, where markets sold off significantly, and the town's pension plan did very well relative to peers. I think some of the data points we're seeing, whether it's the recent concerns over the trade war, sort of bond yields plummeting, where they're signaling the potential for a recession. The conservative outlook, I think at this point, might be warranted, especially given year-to-date gains that we've seen so far. So through June, year-to-date, investment gains have been 1.8 million for the pension plan. So what I want to do is quickly summarize performance on page 17. I'm happy to cover any other information. But I just want to give you a performance snapshot relative to a number of benchmarks as well as to some different peer groups. And if we look at the sort of top line performance, total fund performance, Dave probably read a few of these numbers. What I want to focus on, and then we'll work our way back, is that 5-year number. So 4.58% over the last 5 years. You can see that that is sort of trailing sort of the policy index. There is underperformance there. There's also underperformance relative to your peers, whether you're looking at public plans under 25 million in assets or just all public plans in general. This underperformance, remember, was attributed to that stretch between 2014 and 2016. So we had some sort of difficult conversations and had to make a decision sort of at the end of that period where performance was really suffering, sort of what was the right move. The decision was to make no changes at that point in time. We've been largely rewarded from a calendar year standpoint then. 2017, the plan was returned 14.7% ahead of benchmarks, really close to top quartile performance. And then last year, outperforming benchmarks, top decile relative to your peers. And then we see year to date, 12.28%, a little bit ahead of the policy index and in line with peers, even though we have a more cautious asset allocation right now. So you can see 1 year performance just shy of 8%. That ranks in the top decile for public plans. So on a relative basis, performance has improved after that difficult stretch. 3-year numbers are slightly better than median and outperforming the policy index slightly. What has carried that, the recent performance has been excellent sort of performance within the domestic equity portion of the plan. You can see the 3-year domestic equities have returned 17.2% annualized. That's 3% better than the S&P 500 or Russell 3000 index, and 4% better than sort of a representative equity peer group. So domestic equities have carried a lot of the overall performance, even though they have shifted to the conservative allocation. There is weakness over some time periods. You know, if you look at the international portion, there is, you know, underperformance over 3 and 5 years, but we do see much improved performance here over the current quarter, year to date, and 1 year time period versus benchmarking peers. And then the fixed income portfolio, likewise, you know, the 5-year performance lagging, you know, trailing benchmarks, but you get a little closer to more current time periods, 3 years, top third of the universe, and then the last 12 months, they're in the top quartile. So I think the message here is, you know, the conservative allocation, no one's here to make sort of market timing calls, but given that you're up over double digits year to date, 1.8 million in investment gains through 6 months, I think the cautious allocation might be prudent at this point. Even though they are more conservative relative to peers, they've held up pretty well, especially if you look at that 1 year number, top decile again. So there's a recommendation I think at this point is, you know, we meet again on a regular interval in 6 months or so and assess, you know, the full calendar year. But I think things are progressing as we were hoping they would after that difficult stretch.
Perking up. Bottom line.
Anything else?
No, thanks. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Just a quick question then. Is there a way of, does the better performance year to date in any sense make up for the less robust performance, was it last year? What's a rational way to look at that?
Are we talking about absolute performance, or are we talking about like relative?
Well, I can look at the numbers, you can tell whether, I guess, is there more money in our sort of, in our pocket, so to speak, as a result of the, notwithstanding the, I hate to call them losses, but less robust performance last year, and now it's gone up. Does that make up the decline we experienced before?
I mean, you would have recovered from, you know, the 2-year return. So if we look at, 2-year return won't tell us everything, but in general, it's pretty common after you have a period, you know, equity markets are driving a lot of this. So they were down, large cap stocks were down 13% in the fourth quarter last year, small cap off 20%. So when you ever have a significant sort of drawdown like that, it's not unusual over the next, you know, in this case, 6 months to make it up and then some. So it's really been just market volatility. So, I mean, it's actually been, all plans lost money last year. Your plan actually did better than a lot of peers, and just about everyone's making money this year, so. It's just
The dreaded volatility word.
What?
The dreaded volatility word.
And that might be, you know, a more cautious allocation at this point might be beneficial, especially given the uptick in volatility we've seen in August. And a lot of this is around trade and tariffs, and this is outside of our control. I mean, be prepared for it. The concern, I think, is one of the bright spots in the U.S. economy has been the consumer. So the 10% tariffs that are scheduled to potentially go into effect on 300 billion of Chinese imports on September 1, they're all consumer goods. I mean, so far the economy really hasn't been impacted by the first round, but this will be probably a more direct impact on consumers, which has been a bright spot in the economy, so.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, number 5, discuss certificates of recognition for community organizations. So I was approached by a local community organization that has done a lot of really good things in McCandless. They're based in McCandless. The members of McCandless. And so I would like to, wouldn't really be a program, but I would like to, they say with your children, catch them doing good things. So I would like for us to make a concerted effort to find these groups and to recognize them, to maybe have a certificate of,
Give them a star,
give them a star.
like a bunch of 4-year-olds.
Well, I wouldn't think about it like that. I think it would be showing the town's appreciation for volunteers, maybe not in local government, but in other areas. And I think it would also be good too, because it would give them a little PR, show our appreciation, and then people can see, oh, look, I'm interested in that organization. They're really, look at the things that they're doing.
Kim, I think that's a good idea. I support it. I belong to an organization where we regularly give certificates of, not recognition,
What are
but
they called?
certificates of appreciation. It's
Okay.
amazing what a nice little certificate means to people.
Don't want to start.
This is what
But
I'm
that's-
saying.
that's basically
yeah.
what it is.
This is what I'm
People like
saying. Okay, so what we can do is,
Costs about $3
anyone in council could say, hey, here's a group.
Give you a star right now.
And if they go by all of our,
Appreciate it.
I start losing my words about after 10. If they're
Be here.
with the town's mission, it's that kind of group, then we could invite them here and then give them a certificate of appreciation. What do you guys think about that?
Good with me.
Let's
Nice idea.
let's
As long as I don't
define
get
a
one.
process for it,
Right.
how frequently and the criteria and things. But I like it.
Okay, all right.
Put Mertz in line for one.
Nope, I don't want to start.
We'll put you in charge. Okay, all right, so what we do is,
I want it. General says chicken dinner.
all right, make a little policy of how this would work. If they would be nominated by a council member, or could someone from the community nominate them, that would maybe be something that we gotta look at. And then, a certificate that we would invite them to the business meeting, and it wouldn't be something we'd have to vote on or anything, it would just be a presentation of appreciation. Okay, seminars and conferences, the Erie Conference, Gettysburg, if you're interested in that, please, you need to make your reservation for that.
It's
October
October
3rd
third
to
through the
6th.
6th.
Whatever it is, those two are coming up, so, if you're interested.
Did you say those two are coming up?
Gettysburg.
There's one in Erie
Yes?
also,
What's the other one?
in Gettysburg,
What's that one?
it's in Gettysburg.
That's,
I don't know what else to
Gettysburg
tell you
Star
about it.
Appreciation
yeah,
Conference.
It's in your, if you look in your email, we've
Right.
gotten stuff
Yeah.
about it, yeah.
Gettysburg in June.
yeah, so I was surprised. Okay. We'll figure it out.
Okay,
Right, that's what I'm looking
okay.
at right
What's
now.
the date is,
Conferences and events, 2019.
Right, I guess.
Goal filing,
okay, here.
this one? The ACW.
Where's that
Make
one?
that bigger than 37%.
All right, any public comment?
There you go.
Bless
See?
you for waiting the whole time,
Okay.
very
I
to
knew
the
you had
end,
something to say.
to the end.
Okay, some of you do know me, and Kim has actually spoken at our organization.
Right here.
I brought this
Yeah,
idea
that's
up to
what I
Kim about the community things because our organization is the Association of University Women. We put on educational community programs. We're affiliated. We partner with La Roche College. So we do a lot of community education things. Kim actually spoke at one of our things. We have monthly meetings. They're free and open to the public. We try to bring in people from the community to come and speak and things like that. We also put on a program called Great Decisions every February and March. What do you do after the Steelers win and the football season's over? But it's a great thing, but it costs us money to do these things. We get about 60 people at the Great Decisions program that come in. We've also, I had an event in May that we brought in I don't know how many of you are aware that March is Women's History Month. 2020 is the 100-year women's suffrage. We are actually working with Heinz Community Center to bring them out to this community and to put on a big event for that. We also raise money because we give a non-traditional student at La Roche a scholarship. And it isn't part of their grant, so it doesn't interfere with that. It's $2,000 that they can use for transportation, babysitting, things like that. We want to start trying to partner with community college and doing some of the same things. We also want to partner and do things. We raise money to give back to the community. We partnered with that. So one of the reasons this came up, because I'm someone that's stickler of letter of the law, we do a fundraiser, and I'll just pass around flyers. But when I started looking into things, because if you want to do a 50-50, that is actually gambling in this state of Pennsylvania, and you have to get a license to do that. In order to do that, you have to be recognized as an organization that functions in your community. So I started talking to Kim about that and said, and you should be aware of some of the things that are going on in the community. Plus, we want to let you know what we are doing. So if you say, hey, we've got a need for some education somewhere, that might be something that we can do and put on an event for the community. La Roche is wonderful for us. They let us use their college, so we don't have to charge for rooms or anything like that. And everything that we've put on so far has been free to the community. It just cost us money, so we have to raise money to do those things. So Kim, thank you for doing this, and I do know some of you from many other things that you've seen me out there standing in the cold. We stand and ring the bell for the Salvation Army. We're crazy. So those are some of the things that we do. But thank you so much.
All right.
Just state your name and address.
Oh, I am so sorry. My name is Debbie Rosenfelder, and my address is 8310 Van Buren Drive, and I am president of the AAUW chapter in McCandless.
So you can see that it's, would be really nice, I think, of the town to recognize that. And a lot of people, it'd be informative also, and then
We
maybe.
already have the first nomination then.
Well, I was just gonna happen to recommend that they'd be
I
the
beat
first
you.
one. I know. And then maybe we could put a little tiny write-up on the, our social media. All right.
I'm on a roll.
All right, finance and personnel meeting, unless there's anyone else needs to speak, is adjourned. Recreation.
I'd like to call to order the Recreation Committee. Number 2, update on proposed fitness court being partially funded by the National Fitness Campaign, which requires fundraising for the remainder of its cost. Bob, would you like to give us some information?
We do have an estimate that was included in your package for the concrete work that would be done. That was $13,000 estimate. It's more or less in line with what we expected that cost to be. We are continuing discussions with UPMC, PNC, and AHN to be the primary sponsor. I don't know whether the change of status between UPMC and Highmark is going to change our strategy of pitting one against the other.
You said that on the,
I know, I did that. But we're continuing to talk with all three of them. We also have a game plan in terms of approaching various fitness businesses in the town to get their support and funding, not only actual financial funding, but just their support in promoting the idea.
There's some advertising.
Advertising. So that's moving forward, and the Patrioticity campaign is also moving forward in terms of having everything ready to go. So it continues to go in the right direction.
Before I ask for any comment, I would like to announce the Heritage Center is going to have a 21 and over fundraiser event to be held at Rose Barn in North Park called the Notorious North Hills on October 17th at 7 p.m. The food and adult beverages will be served, ticket price to be announced. So,
What are those
John-
details,
I'm sorry.
what are those details again, please?
Okay, it's October 17th.
Got it?
7 o'clock. And John was gonna put in
AM.
AM? Yes, you be the first one there. That'd be good.
Is it the Rose Barn?
Rose
When
Barn,
this meeting's
yes.
gonna get over.
Notorious
Go
North
straight
Hills.
there.
That's what it's called?
Yes. John was going to put it in the McCandless chatter.
Town crier.
Town crier,
What's the price? Is there a price?
to be announced.
Oh, to be announced.
But before he did that, I said, let me announce it to council first. Okay, everyone okay with that? Okay, anyone have any comments on the recreation committee?
What's it called, Notorious North Hills?
Yes,
So I was.
price to be announced.
Okay, I'm just trying to get the facts.
What's the price?
Just the facts. To be determined.
I'm sorry.
To be determined.
So I was supposed to get, but I don't think I got unless it came to me just a short time ago from the EAC, that it was one of those approval, you know, for a, they got a speaker and it kind of happened before our last meeting, and then they want to do the topic for our next meeting. It's on tick education. Okay, so, and I don't have the request in front of me, but like I said, they have a speaker and they've got these little things that they're gonna pass out to have to get ticks off
Where
of you.
is
And
that?
it's like, I don't have
Oh, you
anything
don't
in
know.
front
I'm
of
sorry.
me, but it's like the 22nd. It's before our next meeting. It's before, can you remember the date? I can't remember the date, anyway.
Well, maybe you could get it
My
to John,
EAC
he could put it in
We
there.
can send it out to all of you tomorrow.
The point is that council needs to give the nod because we approve all those things.
Right.
There's no cost.
Yes, we like ticks.
There's no cost, and like I said, it'll all be here, but I just wanted to get a nod from you all because it's supposed to
Good.
happen before our meeting.
Right, which is why I announced this, so that.
Right. So I'm sorry, I forgot about that. All right, so yes, so
Any
that's correct.
any comment from council?
That was it.
Any comment from the audience? Recreation committee is adjourned.
Okay, good night.
Good night, thanks for being here.
Done.
Schmosky is who's gonna speak
On the tick stuff, I can't remember.
She does all that advocating to the